What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. This is an interesting show for two reasons. The biggest reason is because we've got our brother, Chris Reckleff, on the show. Chris he is a graduate of the basic course, a graduate of the Proving Ground. That's how we got to know him. He's a big part of the Body of 3 of 7 project. And so this is the Chris that we know, right, over the last few months. But Chris, we learned very quickly, has had a very unique, powerful, interesting life of service to his community, where he still now lives. And I just want to start off, Chris, by telling you, obviously, thank you for your service to the American people, not only as a law enforcement officer, but your service to your country as a Navy veteran, and your continued service to the people that know you, right? The people who have got to work with you outside of work, and that being me included, brother.
Well, thank you very much. Humbled and honored to be here. Still in a little bit of shock that you even invited me, but thank you very much.
Well, we realized, like I say, on the basic course, as we were out on the mission with Chris and his team, we get started to hear, Chris is, talking to his teammates, and us instructors, we're kind of listening, from wherever we are in the patrol, and we're like, oh, let me bump up a little bit. I want to hear this story, right? So we learned real quick. There are some cool stories, and just, like I say, awesome life. Chris is still, to this day, when I see him out, I saw him out at the Proving Ground this past weekend, and still, you see him, and all he does is give. He's not there to take from anybody. He's just there to give. A very unique human being. The other second thing that makes this podcast very unique, oh, wasn't that burp? Blake and I are sharing a microphone. Just like this. Chad told me, he said, listen, buddy, you talk too much at the Proving Ground, and you're talking too much on my podcast. I'm going to take the mic from you. Now we have to share a mic. So here we are down. So, yeah, I just had to take the mic away from Blake. I mean, he's talking too much. I'm afraid somebody is going to end up calling him a fool. So, Blake and I are sharing a microphone. So, that's the two unique things about this podcast. Brother Chris, how's your trip been?
It's been good. Flew in mid last week just to get a little acclimated with the time change, and spent Thursday night with my old swim buddy, forever swim buddy, Peter Ortiz from the basic course, and stayed with him and Tom, brother Tom, on Thursday night, reunited, caught up on what was going on each of our lives, and we got to it. We got to it hard on Friday. You weren't messing around. You gave us 137 seconds to go from that classroom to the PT field.
Brother, I'm glad I did, because I didn't know what you were going through in that upstairs room, man. You needed to get out and get some fresh air, didn't you?
True story.
Yeah.
So like I told you guys earlier, I'm not anti-vaccine.
Yeah.
I'm from Los Angeles, California, which was the most restrictive guidelines when it comes to school closures, restaurant closures regarding COVID. But yet, with all of that, Los Angeles still had the highest caseload, positive cases of COVID, and highest death rate, more than New York City. I worked the entire frontline, field of police work for the entire year of 2020. Never had any issues, but I elected to get the vaccine prior to coming here for a specific reason, so I can go visit my mother. And in doing so, I had an adverse reaction. And we talked about the symptoms and what happened. And I remember reaching out to my sister 2 days before I was flying here, and I told her, and she says, hey, you're having severe adverse reactions to the Johnson vaccine. And the reason I called her was that was the day they had pulled it from the market. The CDC did. So I'm like, great, the vaccine I get, a couple of days later, people are dying from it, getting blood clots. And to this day, sitting here, I'm still not well. But like you say, if you don't speak the word, it doesn't exist. And, because she's telling me, go to your doctor, you need to see him now. And I'm not a brain surgeon. I joined the Navy at 17, so I know what's coming. If I go to a doctor's going to say, stay home, get some rest.
Yeah.
Take some Tylenol, plenty of fluids, don't do anything strenuous. If I tell a doctor I'm flying to Georgia, Navy SEAL's going to torture me for three days, he's going to say, no, you're not going. So I just kept it to myself.
Yeah.
But when I arrived and I was having dinner with Pete and Tom, they both picked up on it. They could see I was off.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, you doing all right? And so I'm like, I better tell them, because I knew I wasn't going to tell any of the instructors. I said, hey, I'm going to tell you guys, but just keep it in-house between the three of us. In case I drop on the course, it's not a heart attack. I don't take any medications. I'm having some issues with this vaccine. And again, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm not telling anyone to get vaccinated or not for COVID. That's a personal decision. I have no regrets getting it because I got it for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just having some difficulties with the way I feel. And they said, okay, Roger that. We'll keep your eye on you. But when you okey-doked me and swim buddy Pete on the PT field and split us up in two different platoons, I realized, oh, okay, we're doing separate evolutions. If I fall down and something happens to me and he's not going to be around to see and tell you guys, hey, this is how Chris has been feeling. This is what he did prior to coming here. He got a vaccine. So I told my new swim buddy, Matt, I said, hey, just keep this between me and you. But if I go down, you're my swim buddy. This is all it is. So this way, if anything happened, because I was not, like you said, in that classroom when we started, you're talking, it reminded me, and this is what was keeping me standing. So on the basic course, I remember we kicked off, and I know we don't like to give away too much about the proving ground and basic course, but we were a quarter mile into the mission, and on day one of the basic course, and you're behind me walking, and I just remember hearing you say, so Chris, you retire yet? And I go, no, sir, 3 more months. And right when I say that, I trip, fall, face plant with my 60-pound pack, bust my knuckle open. I'm trying to do the old suck on the blood like no one saw that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, what an idiot, Chris. What a first impression you just made in front of Chad Wright. You just face planted in front of him. And now, 4 months later?
Yeah.
5 months later, here I am at the proving ground, and you bring us up to the classroom to start, and you're talking to us, and we're in a circle, and I just felt the walls coming in.
Yep.
And I go, I'm about to faint. I've never fainted in my life. And I'm like, I'm about to collapse.
I know that feeling, man. That's that feeling when you've been underwater for too long, right? And the vision starts to close in. It gets, yeah.
And all I remember, the last thing I remember before I was about to drop, I heard you say, y'all have 137 seconds to get to the PT field. And, the door opened, so we went out and got fresh air, and that kind of snapped me out of it, and got a little bit more clear-headed.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I just said, hey, I'm not telling any instructors I'm gonna get through this. I'm not going to talk about it, think about it. I'll get through it.
See, I never would have known you were going through that, Chris, to be honest with you, which, your swim buddies are going to know you better than I'm going to know you as your instructor. But when I get there, I'm looking at the proving grounds. I'm looking at Two Troop as like a whole organism. So it's a strange dynamic there. At the basic course, we get to focus on each other as individuals, I think, more so than at the proving ground. We're looking at the organism that is Two Troop. So I had no clue you were going through that, man, until you showed up to the house today. And, I said that, and that now what the mission is behind us, it's proper to say, hey, buddy, no, we don't need. Well, this is how I feel, and you told me how you felt. We went running anyways.
Yeah, it was a good run this afternoon.
Yeah, we had a dang good run, man, and you crushed it. But
no, first of all, I didn't crush it. Second of all, Blake, I drive here about an hour and a half, 45-minute drive, right? And I did a hike this morning, hike yesterday, just real easy stuff, like 3 miles of walking. I pull up, Chad comes walking up. He goes, all right, brother, we're going on a 10-mile run. I'm like, what? I'm like, what? We are? I thought I was doing a podcast.
Well, that's one thing I didn't tell you guys about Chris. He's also an ultra runner. And he just done a lot of amazing things. And Blake, if you need the mic, just do this. Can you do this?
Chad's all the time giving you something you weren't expecting, wasn't he?
You know what? And that's
you should have expected the unexpected, Chris.
I was saying that's failure on me to anticipate. So I got what I deserved.
Podcast. The podcast is just what we do after the run. That's how it should be. So, all right, brother. Gosh, it's so hard. And here's the thing, guys. With Chris, first of all, how many years of service, military and law enforcement, do you have, Chris?
So at 17, I joined the Navy, and we talked about this. I was what's called the delayed entry program. So I signed up as a juvenile. My parents were happy to go down to the recruiter's office and sign the papers since I was a juvenile, shipped me off. I left when I was 18 to go to boot camp. And then I got assigned to the USS Pyro. I was just a fireman rank. Mm-hmm. You know, I just enlisted. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to serve. My father was in the Navy, and I wanted to follow footsteps. I always wanted to serve my country. Joined the Navy, and as soon as I got to the USS Concord, the USS Pyro, which is in Concord, California, it's actually the USS Pyro 2, because the first USS Pyro blew up in port and wiped out the town of Concord. It's an ammunition ship, AE-24. As soon as I got on board, we went on a quick 3-month Westpac, and we went to Hawaii first, and I noticed these 4 guys get on board once we get to Hawaii, and they got UD T-shirts, green shirts, T-shirts, and jungle boots. Go back out to sea. We hit Guam. I see a pickup truck come up. Got a bunch of dive gear in the back, tanks I can see. I've never dove before, but I obviously know what dive tanks look like. Yeah. Twin 80s, Twin 90s, etc. And I see these 4 guys get off, jump in this pickup truck, and they take off. We go back out to sea. We're headed to like Guam and Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, etc., Philippines. And while we're at sea, and I'm working in an engine room, and in the times I'd come up to chow, I'd see them. It was only 250, I think, crew on board. And we had a small helo deck. I'd see them working out on deck, running around the ship. So I befriended them. And I said, hey, who are you guys? What do you do? They said, oh, we're EOD. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, roger that. What's that? You know, I got all 2 months out of boot camp, you know, and they told me what they did, what their assignment was. And I said, you know, how do I get in that? So on the way back, you know, to the States on our Westpac, when we hit Guam coming back, I took the PFQ, physical fitness test. And then when we got to Hawaii, I remember getting interviewed by their lieutenant. And by the time we got back to Concord, California, there was orders waiting for me to go to dive school and bomb school. But like you know, the Navy's not just going to give you this cool training without something in return. So I had to sign an extension.
A little commitment.
Yeah. So I ended up doing 4 years and 5 months. I know it's an odd number, but I had to sign 5 months. And I remember signing it. So I'm still on board, and I sign it. And I go to the guy that I'm signing the papers with. I go, hey, by the way, I never dove before. So if I don't make it through dive school, like, what happens? Like, does this extension go away? And they're like, oh, no. You still got that commitment, and the Navy's just going to send you to whatever ship needs you, and you'll be a fireman back out there. And, you know, which is fine, because I loved the Navy and being on a ship, but that wasn't what I wanted. I knew right away when I saw these guys, and I remember they put on the chow hall one day, we had the old TVs with the VHS. They actually put in a VHS recruitment tape on EOD. And I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. So they sent me to Panama City, Florida.
Yep.
For dive school.
Navy dive school.
And I remember after day one realizing immediately that I was in over my head. I'm like, this is brutal.
Dive school is no joke. Yeah.
And I believe it was 5 weeks. The whole training was 3 months, but we did 5 weeks or 6 weeks of dive school in Panama City. We started with 28. We graduated 12. If there was only 11 spots, I wouldn't have made it. Because out of those 12 that graduated, I was number 12. Mm-hmm. There's no joke about it.
Now, were you surfing and stuff? Were you in the water prior to joining the Navy? Or
yeah, so...
what was hard about it for you?
Well, I mean, originally I was born in Canada. I was fortunate enough that my parents came to the States, and it's a part I forgot. So when I joined the Navy, and then I didn't have to sign away my Canadian citizenship. But when I went into the E.O.D. program, I had to.
Yeah.
And that's because of...
security clearance. Yeah.
Right. So I had renounced my Canadian citizenship, which is great because I hate the cold. So I had no desire to go back to Canada. So that was the easiest thing.
No choices after that.
But,
you renounced it.
Yeah. So me and my buds would go down to the Jersey Shore, and that's basically where I learned to surf.
Okay.
Started with, borrowing people's boards, big truck inflatable tires. If you could surf waves with big inflatable tires, you can pretty much learn to surf on anything at that point.
Yeah.
But nothing, dramatic. I just love the ocean, and swimming and being out there. It was the PT, running forever on the sand,
mm-hmm.
and it was immediately getting thrown into breathing air underwater.
Doesn't it feel weird the first time?
I had never done that, and anyone listening that wants to be a Navy diver, this is what you don't do. They put you in the shallow end, which is like 3 feet, and you're sitting on the bottom of the pool.
Yep.
Right? And it goes down to like 25 feet. But we're on the shallow end, 3 feet, first day breathing air, and they have you sit down on the bottom, stand on top, put the regulator in your mouth, and then sit on the bottom and start breathing. And they're looking at you, and I'm going, this ain't right. This is
not natural.
This is not natural. And I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I immediately got back up, out of that water. This is the first time breathing air. That's when now, for the rest of your time you're there, the instructor's got you in their radar, and they're going to watch you.
Yeah.
But that's
that you guys have to understand how dangerous that is. Yes. Even in 3 feet of water,
right?
There's something you guys have probably heard me say, arterial gas embolism. It's very dangerous.
Yes.
So yes, a dive instructor sees you get a little uncomfortable breathing compressed air underwater. Boom. They're going to watch you like a hawk. Not because they hate you, but because it's dangerous.
You're going to be a detriment to the team.
Yeah.
And as simple as that. And if you don't belong, you don't belong. No hard feelings, you're out.
That's it, brother.
I quickly, and it was the help of, the other guys that are going through the training, we'd be in the barracks at night getting ready for, bed, getting ready to go through the ringer again the next day. And it was always just sitting around. It was almost like a pre-visualization course that I didn't know existed till I talked to you about it. That's like, to learn how to relax. And I actually started having fun with it because I remember they used to take us to it was like a 25-foot deep pool, but they filled the water to like 20 feet. So when you're surface and you're flutter kicking to stay afloat, because you'll do drills all day long on the bottom of the pool. And if you're a heavy breather of that air, you're sucking air. When you're done with your tank air, you have to go to the surface and kick and stay afloat till the last person's done breathing air.
Which is not easy. This is a standard that we have in BUDS, Chris. It's a 5-minute tread with twin 80s,
right?
Open circuit rig on your back. I can't tell you how many dudes fail that evolution. It is not easy to tread water with twin 80s on your back.
Extremely difficult, and as you can tell, I'm not a big guy either.
Yeah.
So, I was just fighting to stay up there, but, that's kind of when you start getting forged into learning how to, grind it out and be, and grit, and tough things out. But I started getting so comfortable that I remember during pool week was 5 days. They called it pool week.
It's like hell week. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's certainly not like hell week. We went to bed at night,
But it's
Set-
intense.
setup.
Yeah, I've heard about pool week. I've never been through it, but I've heard about it.
It was brutal. And they used to play, so underneath the water, there was a big window. So you would see like the commanding officer at dive school behind that glass watching you underwater. And I already have a target on my back because they already knew from day one breathing air that I wasn't comfortable. But I became so comfortable because I loved it. They used to play the theme from Jaws on the underwater sound system. It was awesome. Like, for some reason, I'm like, I'm getting paid for this. This is great. I never expected this. So now you're diving on the bottom of the pool, and I specifically remember when it was the phase where the instructors are on the surface with just snorkels and masks.
Yeah.
And you're on the bottom with your dive buddy, and then they come flying down, and they, you know how it is, man. They hit you, they flip you upside down, they first thing they do is smack the regulator out of your mouth. They wait till you've already breathed out bubbles. They tie your regulator around your manifold in the back, and they're trying to drag your tanks from you. They're popping off the straps, and that was always the rule. It doesn't matter if you lose your fins, your mask, anything. It's don't let the instructors get the tanks from you. So I remember being on the bottom of the pool, and instructor is dragging my tanks from me, and I'm hanging on for dear life. And I remember being so comfortable, I just started smiling, shaking my head, going, "You ain't getting these tanks." And
wow, man.
And how that happened, I don't know. I really think it was visualizing.
Yep.
That I'd go to bed at night and picture, this is what I'm going to do, and remain calm. Because, if you panic when you're underwater, if you panic right now, we're above ground, we can control our breathing.
Yep.
And calm yourself down, calm your heart rate. If you're underwater and you don't have air and you panic,
it's all over.
You can't get calm. It's over.
Yep.
So I just ended up having fun with it. To me, it was a fun experience.
Well, that visualization is a key technique, especially that's the main technique that I also use. It's so cool how our experiences are so similar. That's the main technique that I used to accomplish tasks in the water, was visualization with diving, underwater swims, whatever it was. And this evolution that Chris is telling you guys about right now, I don't know if you've heard about it. We call it in the SEAL teams pool competency. So like Chris said, you're crawling along the bottom of the pool. They come down on you like a shark and just wreck your world, man. And you have to do everything you can to keep hold of your tanks. And then when it's all over, you have to do everything you can to fix your mess that they've created. You have to fix it so that you can get air again, right? And when you get yourself all fixed, there can't be a twist in a strap anywhere. There can't be any, right? Everything has to be traced, right, perfect. Did they ever give you the whammy knot that you couldn't fix and you had to FSA?
No, it happened to some of the guys. And I remember one guy that drowned, and they had to, get him to the top and resuscitate him on the pool deck. But I got lucky. I was able, there was plenty of times, because once the instructor with just a snorkel that obliterates you, lets you go, you can't fight back. All you can do is hold on to your tank.
It's like you're getting pummeled by the surf.
Right.
In the surf zone, yeah.
You can't fight back. You just roll with it. And then once the instructor with the snorkel lets you go and goes to surface, the dive instructors that are breathing air on the bottom are on their knees right there, and they hit their start on their stopwatch. And I don't remember what it was, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. You have to clear everything. The first thing is getting your air back on and taking a hit of air.
Yep.
Right. So there was plenty of times I couldn't at first undo, my regulator from the manifold.
Yeah.
But I was always able to at least get my mouth on it, get a hit of air, calm down a little bit, and then work it out. So I never got that knot that just couldn't be undone.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. You're getting timed, and if one of the straps, is twisted or whatever,
you failed.
You failed. And you got to do it again.
Talk about attention to detail.
Yes.
Under stress.
But it's the only way it should be for a job like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which helped forge later in life other assignments that I went and did. But yeah, I somehow made it through. Again, we started with 28, graduated 12. And then they gave us 3 days to get up to Indian Head, Maryland for bomb school. So you picture 12, we're now salty because we graduated Navy dive school, right?
Oh, yeah. Navy divers, dude. Navy divers are some salty cats. I'm telling you, man.
So we get up there and we think, oh, man, this is just going to be classroom, challenges and then maybe some field exercises, blowing stuff up, a lot of classroom instruction on, explosives, etc.
You're thinking you've already been through the crucible of dive school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First week up there, didn't see anything about bombs, no classrooms. They tortured us in the river, nothing but river swims. I'm talking, it takes you like 20 minutes to swim 100 yards against the current and like 5 minutes to swim back because the current's just that powerful.
Yeah.
All day, and then swimming in the pool with bricks in your hand, the wet towels,
Mm-hmm.
swimming laps with a wet towel on each hand. They got us good. They got our minds right.
Did you guys ever do drown proofing, Chris, where they tie your hands and feet up?
We did not.
Okay.
We did it in the form of you had to keep your hands behind your back
Yeah.
and your ankles crossed, but they never physically tied us like they did you guys.
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, in the Navy, these swimming pools that me and Chris are talking about, we're calling them swimming pools because that's what you guys understand them as. They're actually called combat training tanks. When you walk in and see this swimming pool, you realize real quick, this is not a place for pleasure.
Right.
Crap's about to go down, son.
Yeah, 100%.
So EOD school, they basically kick you in the face the first week.
Yes. To get your minds right, they're like, just because you have a dive pin, that means nothing.
Because you're still a student at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So once that week was over, then it was more into learning about explosives, setting charges, detonations, the whole thing, det cord, blasting caps, C4, etc.
And what kind of stuff were you guys in back in those times? What were you training for specifically? Was it clearing underwater obstacles or ship attacks or what was it specifically?
And again, my years of service was not, it was during peacetime.
Yeah.
There were no wars going on. So we were still training when I ultimately got to my detachment upon graduating, bomb school. I got sent to Detachment Point Magoo, which is the Pacific Missile Test Center in Ventura, California. I was fortunate enough to get it because out of all the dive teams in the Navy, all the EOD teams, Point Magoo does more diving than any other dive team.
Mm.
So I was stoked about that. We did a lot of, how do I say this? So the Navy has some practice areas off the coast, if you will, where we would do a lot of training, recovering a lot of certain items that would be dropped into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We would get orders to go, they were called mine exercises. And we would go recover certain things from the ocean floor.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a lot of that, and we did a lot of swimming into the harbor. We would take the helicopter rides, and we do the 30 for 30, 20 for 20, and 10 for 10s. 30 for 30s is the helicopter. We can go in 30 at 30 feet.
Yep.
You can jump off with no tanks. I think it was 20 for 20. You can jump in, not with tanks still. Something else, other equipment you could wear at that height and speed. But we could only jump with full tanks on twin 80s if it was going 10 and 10 feet above, because you don't want to snap your back.
Yep.
Hitting that water sometimes is like hitting concrete if you
Dang
hit it
right,
wrong.
man.
So we're doing a lot of that, swimming in the ports at night in darkness, and practicing putting limpet mines on hulls of ships.
Yeah.
In ports, like we would say do that. Whether it be in foreign territory, whatever, at war. But again, I was during peacetime, so everything I did was always just training.
Well, and likewise, same for us, Chris. When it comes to diving, there are very few SEALs that have done actual combat diving missions. Very, very few. I'd say you could probably count on one hand right now within the last 20 years, SEALs that have done Now, I say SEALs that have done combat diving missions that aren't part of the SDV teams. You know, the SDV teams, that's all they do is dive. And man, they're doing some cool stuff. I mean, diving is a really cool skill. And when you pair it with the knowledge of knowing how to blow stuff up or recover things that will go boom, that's a serious job, man.
It was fun setting a lot of charges.
Yeah.
Both in the ocean, and we also would go out to the desert and do a lot of detonations as well. But we, on a monthly basis, we had training out there off the coast. We were doing a lot of dive ops. I can't really get into how many and what they entailed, but I never had any close, encounters or issues with hundreds upon hundreds of dives I did, other than two things. One, I wrecked my hearing a couple times because when you're young, it would be, we would go out and we'd have to recover, say, a total of 40 items from the ocean floor. So 8 of us would go out there, and you're partnered up. You always got a dive buddy, right?
That's it.
So in the morning, before sunrise, we would go out in the F470, Zodiac rubber boats with the sonar, hang over the side, and we would mark what we were looking for on the bottom. We'd mark it from the surface, throw a clump with a line with a buoy, mark all the things we're supposed to recover. It's just training.
Mm-hmm.
And then earlier at sunrise, we would go out. So say me and Blake are dive buddies, It was always a competition.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who would recover the most items, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then whoever recovered the most, when we got back home to our detachment after this training exercise for a couple of days, everyone else would have to buy the dinner, the beers, whatever, right? So
that's the Navy, man.
So what Blake and I would do is, you know how it is, the dive manual, I don't know if it's changed, but it used to be descending was 75 feet a minute and ascending was 60 for 60.
Yeah.
So that means a foot a second coming back up. That's really when you're going to get hurt.
Yep.
Well, we throw that, especially the descending part, out the window, because the faster you go to the bottom and have less bottom time because you recover what you're looking for and you get back to the surface, the clock stops.
The more you can dive.
The more you can dive, right? So Blake and I look at each other, go, hey, what do you about? We'll throw an extra 10 pounds of weight on our weight belt. So we would scream down to the bottom.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So the dive boat would, it was a 24-foot Monarch boat, pull up alongside, dive master would pull up the slack from the, on the line from the buoy, try to get it as taut as possible. Blake and I would hobble over, face each other, nod, and we'd roll off the back. And we'd meet underneath the bottom, and we would scream to the ocean floor. We would scream, and so much so, it starts getting dark quick, in California waters.
Oh, yeah.
And we would go in so fast. Sometimes, like right now, I'm under the weather because of this vaccine. It feels like I have a cold. Probably sounds like I have a cold. And you're trying to equalize pressure in your ears. We're going so fast. If you start to squeeze, even if you try to stop, it's too late. You're going to squeeze. So I would squeeze my ears often. There's a positive part to that. You're tearing a part of your eardrum. So now you don't have to worry about squeezing that ear for the rest of the dive op. So, that's the way our minds worked at a young age. And we would go so fast that by the time, you get to almost perpetual darkness. And then by the time you see the ocean floor, I would collide into it and Blake would be right behind me, colliding into me. And, usually, and one of us would be what we call the driver, have the handheld sonar, find the item we're looking for. Usually it's pretty close. We marked it pretty close from the surface. We'd recover it, hook into it, we'd go back up. But instead of 60 for 60, we would probably go from 100, say we're at 100 feet below the surface. Instead of taking 100 seconds like the dive manual, we'd probably go up in about 50, 60 seconds. And what we would do is we would just constantly blow out.
Yeah.
Blow out the whole time.
Yeah. As that air expands in your lungs, guys, as you're coming up, you have to release that air out of your lungs as it expands, or other words, it causes significant damage.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a dangerous game you guys were playing, man.
We were, but young and dumb.
Oh yeah.
You're invincible.
That's it.
So, of all those, the only thing that ever I only had one close call, and it was my very last dive in the Navy. Other than the sea lions that would, scare the bejesus out of you as you're going down, and suddenly you'd see a shadow coming your way, and you're immediately, your heart pops thinking it's a shark, and it's a sea lion, and they would bang against you and play with you all the way to the ocean.
They love to do that.
Oh, yeah. But I only had one close call, and it was the last dive of the Navy. I actually got a tattoo as a memento from it. So I was diving with our dive corpsman, Bill Scott, and there was one last item to recover. We got to the surface, and our dive op, our master chief's like, hey, we got one more down there. You guys good to do it? You got enough bottom time left on the dive table? You good? I'm like, look at my tank, my pressure, how much air. I was a little low on air, but I wasn't too worried about it. I said, yeah, roger that. Because everyone we had hit, we got to the bottom. What we were looking for was right there. So this is the last dive of my Navy career. I'd already got accepted to the police academy.
Wow, man.
We flip off the boat, scream to the bottom. He's got the sonar. We get to the bottom, and what we're looking for isn't there. So my job is I have to unhook the hooks from the rope that goes to the surface to the buoy and put it in. I call it a clump. It's just a big weight with a hole in the middle. I put the line through it. I give him to him, and he's got the sonar, and he's off on the ocean floor going in the direction of where he's getting a signal to look for the item. I'm pulling the slack from the surface to give him slack so he can keep going out to find this. I get to the point where, I got no more slack, and he still needs slack. I can't see him now because he's too far away and it's dark down there. So I do what we're trained to do. I hold on to the line, and I pick up the clump off the ocean floor, and you walk backwards in the direction you want to go. It's the easiest way to carry it. As I'm doing that, again, that's to free up slack for him to keep reaching to where he needs to go, his destination. I realize I got no more air. No big deal. Got a reserve. So I hit the little reserve on my manifold. No air. So when you jam the jugs or you charge the jugs, you have to have the reserve down, at least back then. I can't, we're talking the 80s. You have to have the reserve down or the air is not going to fill up the reserve tank.
Yeah.
I had no air in my reserve tank. So now I'm on the ocean floor, and I'm exhausted because it's like our 6th dive of the dive set. And I'm on the ocean floor at about, 105, 110 feet below the surface. And I've got no air.
And your swim buddy's out of sight.
You got it.
So nobody breathing at this point.
Nope.
Yeah.
So I drop the clump, and I just start following the line, holding my breath. And I get to him, and he hasn't reached the item. And he feels me pulling. He looks, and I go. So he knows right away I got no air. So he gives me his regulator. We buddy breathe for a little bit, calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, as those tanks, that air in those tanks fill up your buoyancy compensator, your BC, to help you ascend.
Yep.
Well, now you're exhausted on the ocean floor, and I have no air to even fill up my buoyancy compensator. So I've got to kick from the bottom to get to the surface.
100+ feet.
While we buddy breathe with the regulator.
Holy
back
smokes,
and
brother.
forth. Now, I'm sure you guys obviously had much more training than us, but as you know, when you're ascending and the water surface starts to get a little light, I'm not looking at my gauge. Usually you're looking at your gauge. I'm not concentrating on that. We're just concentrating on buddy breathing.
Yeah.
But normally it starts to get a little light, so okay, I'm getting closer to the surface, and you always put your hand over your head.
Yeah.
And that's so you don't bang into anything as you hit the surface. Well, as luck would have it, the guy that was replacing me, the new guy on the team, was the coxswain driving the dive boat. He couldn't find our bubbles as we were coming up, mainly because the seas were pretty rough, and more importantly, instead of a set of 2 bubbles coming up, there was only a set of 1.
Yeah.
And he lost sight of where we were, coming back up. And because we didn't know this, we were coming up underneath the boat. And so we didn't have our hands over our head because it was still dark. It was still casting a shadow.
Yeah, yep.
So next thing I know, we bang our heads into the bottom of the boat, and I turn, I look, and there's the prop. Slowly turning towards me.
Gosh,
And,
dog, man.
Yeah, and Bill Scott grabbed me and just pulled me out of the way. And, obviously got lucky enough to not get chopped up and made it to the surface. So I go my whole Navy career with no issues. And the very last dive, I almost drowned on the bottom of the ocean floor.
Who charged those tanks?
I never even asked.
Okay.
I never even asked.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't me.
Yeah.
That I know. But whether it was the new guy or not, really doesn't matter because, when you're part of a team, it may be an individual's fault, but there's always a backup. Somebody's charging tanks. There's somebody else that's supposed to be double checking, making sure, they go over to where everything's getting, we call it, jamming the jugs. Someone goes over there and looks and double checks that, everybody's got the reserve lever, all the sets of twin 80s got the reserve lever down position. So it's getting filled. Somebody missed it. But it is what it is,
Yeah, and that's I didn't dive a lot of open circuits, so I'm just trying to. It's awful strange that being your last dive, to run into a scenario of that magnitude. This is a big deal. I mean, I'm sure the listeners can understand. Now, I can't even understand it because I've never dove to 100 feet. The deepest I've ever dove was 30 feet. If I was ever below 30 feet, it was because I had accidentally taken an excursion. Oxygen is toxic. You get below 30 feet, and I was always diving pure oxygen when I was in open water. So I can't even understand what it feels like to be at 100+ feet of depth and have something like this happen. But, to me, were you at that point, it being your last dive? I mean, were you still feeling really locked on? I mean, were you just trying to get through it, or where was your head at? Can you trace it to anything? Is there anything that you think you could have maybe done to prevent that scenario? I mean, any procedures that you missed, any complacency involved, anything like that, or was it just happened to be your last dive?
And as far as being locked on or complacent, I was definitely locked on.
Okay.
I know the severity of it. So I definitely was not complacent. I was locked on. I was ready to go for every mission. And I was having a blast. As a matter of fact, I was more excited because knowing like, man, this is it. This is the last one. Yeah. Make it count. I'm going to miss this because I absolutely loved my Navy career. It was a tough decision to leave the Navy. You're getting bombarded with the $30,000 reenlistment bonus. We're going to send you to more dive training, gas dive training, et cetera, more bomb training. I wanted to follow a second path, which I'd always wanted to be because I had one idol in my life, and that was my grandfather, and he was a New York City policeman for 21 years. So I always wanted to be a policeman. So I had already started the testing and got accepted by the Los Angeles Police Department, but I was still so into the Navy. I mean, I was getting paid to work out, wear UDT shorts and jungle boots, get tan all day, and swim out in the ocean. So I definitely was locked on. Somehow, whoever was in charge, and I never asked, somebody for that mission had the responsibility of charging our tanks, jamming our jugs, and they made a mistake, and it almost cost me, I should say cost the team because we're all one, but I was able to stay calm, just like I did to make it through dive school, because I realized panicking ain't going to do any good.
No.
If I panic, I'm just going to drown down here, So let's get through this. So, again, when the heat of battle comes, you always resort back to your training.
Yep.
And that's all we did was train. Again, I wasn't at war. So I just resorted back to the training that was instilled in me. And even though this was the only time I ever had a close call, relying on the training worked and having confidence in it.
And you guys, I don't know if I had a speaking engagement today and was talking to these people, and I'm stressing training to people. I stress training to people so much, and you guys, here's the reason, right? Chris is telling you the same thing, that this is the reason why I stress the importance of training and training like you fight, because Chris just said it. It couldn't be said any better. In the heat of battle, when stuff is out of your control, when the situation is no longer in your hands and you have to react and save your life, save the life of your business, save the life of a family member, whatever it may be, right? The repercussions of your reaction are significant. You are always going to fall back to your training if you have trained. If you haven't trained, you've got nothing to fall back on, right? And then what's your only other option? You're going to panic.
Yes, absolutely. You talked about it over the weekend, this past weekend during the proving ground. You talked about, plan your dive your plan, and that was true that day. But regarding the training, we always you train like it's the real thing. And we did that in the units that I worked on, the police department. You train like it's the real thing. So when the real thing happens, it almost feels fake, like more surreal. Like, oh yeah, we've done this before, even though now it's real. Like the bullets are flying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just a hardcore training, and I like to refer to it as mindset. Some people call it focus. I like using the word mindset.
Yep. Well, hey, look, Chris, you're the first Navy diver we've had on the podcast, and I get a lot of. I'm so glad that you told this part of your story here because, we get a lot of young people that listen to this podcast, or maybe not, super young, but even in their 20s, guys that might aspire to have a military career, aspiring to be a SEAL, or maybe not sure about the whole SEAL thing, but know they want to do something special. And I think a career like Chris just described to you as a U.S. Navy diver and EOD technician is vastly overlooked. And it is probably, in my personal opinion, the best career path in the Navy. I think a Navy diver or EOD tech, and this EOD techs they're all in the Navy. They're all divers too, but that is the best career path in the Navy. Like Chris just told you guys, it's a dude. There's nothing cooler than a dive locker. I mean, these guys are just they're living the life, man. They are living that life, and they're doing cool stuff. And they're solid dudes. They're all fit. They all love their job. They all get plenty of sunshine. They get to do awesome stuff. So I'm really glad you told that story, man.
Yeah, I know that's one I hadn't told you before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a little crazy way to end my military career.
Yeah. So, you said you had one person that you really idolized in your life, and that was your grandfather.
Yes.
That
was my mother's father. Yes.
Okay. New York City police officer.
Yeah, 21 years.
21 years. And what was your relationship like with him?
It was great. I mean, I used to beg my mom on the weekends, after church on Sunday mornings, can we go out? Because my grandparents lived in Queens. And at this point, we were living in New Jersey. When we had moved from Canada, we settled in New Jersey. So it was a little bit of a drive, depending on traffic, a little over an hour. But we only had one car. It's a 69 lime green Dodge Dart, 2-door, no air conditioning, no seat belts. And, it's like, Ma, can we go out and see Graham and Gramps, out in Queens, New York? And we would go out there, and he would just tell me the coolest stories.
Yeah.
And I would be sitting there just glued. And I just knew at some point, I always knew I wanted to serve the country. So military was already locked on.
Yeah.
But I always had that in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that I would have become a policeman had I not been sent to Ventura, California for my EOD detachment, location. Because Ventura, California is about an hour north of Los Angeles. And I knew being out there that at that time, Los Angeles Police Department was extremely highly regarded. as not only the best police department in the United States, but possibly the world. And that's what that's what drew me towards the Los Angeles Police Department. So about the last 9 months or so of my Navy career, when the Navy was already starting to put the feelers out to get me to re-enlist, I started secretly driving down to Los Angeles, filled out the application, had to drive back down, take the oral interview, get a letter saying you passed that, you got to come down for a physical fitness test, then the psych test. And then I go to take the not the physical fitness test. I'd passed that, the physical by the city doctor, right? And I have this lady, obviously I don't remember her name, nice lady, but completely out of shape and older, and she's checking out my whole body. And I am in, at that time, prime physical condition, because all we did was work out. We would run down to EOD Point Magoo is on the beach. So we'd run from our detachment, we'd hit the weights all day, then we'd sprint down to the ocean, do an ocean swim, come back, run back. I was best shape of my life.
Isn't it awesome?
And then I get this LA city doctor who knows nothing about physical fitness examine me. I go home. I don't think anything of it. And about 2 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail saying, you've been disqualified. You failed the physical. And I'm like, what? And during it, you had to fill out the application, and a questionnaire rather. And I had broken my knee twice growing up, playing hockey and once falling off a bike. So I had a cast for like 6 months at one time, from my thigh. From my pelvis all the way down to my ankle. Right. Didn't hinder me becoming a Navy diver, any of that. But her findings were that my knee, having had issues with it growing up, might jeopardize my partner in the field of police work. So I was looking at in disbelief. So I went to the dive medical officer, similar to like you did, and I show him this letter, and the dive medical officer started laughing. So he was nice enough to write a letter and sent it back to the city, to the Los Angeles Police Department. And, I was basically protesting my disqualification. Yeah. And about 2-3 weeks after that, I get a letter saying, okay, you're back on the eligibility list. So whatever he wrote in there, he basically wrote, because I read it, but whatever he wrote to them, they obviously realized, we made a mistake disqualifying this guy. Because he wrote, hey, the things he's doing in the Navy are far more demanding he'll ever do as a policeman. Physically. Yeah, physically, yeah. Maybe not mentally or other aspects. But, so I got put back on the eligibility list, got through the background check, and then suddenly I get a notice saying, hey, congratulations, you're hired. You're going to start March of 1989. And my tour in the Navy was ending February of 89.
Now, I got to ask you, Chris, it's interesting to me that you make this career transition, because you've put in a lot of work, not only to get into the Navy, but then you've done your deployment. You've went to these specialized schools. You're a Navy diver, EOD tech. You've put a lot into this career. How would you describe your desire to become a police officer? Because you left a lot to go do something that you had never done before. So what was that desire like, man? What was the driving thing?
It was the continued service. So I was serving the country, which I felt was an obligation and a passion that I had wanted to do. And you're right. I had what I still feel the coolest job ever. Yeah. I was getting paid to work out, dive. Yeah, so some of the nights were tough because we would train all night long, etc. But I loved every aspect of it. And there was something about wanting to continue to serve, but in a smaller capacity, meaning instead of serving the country, and we weren't at war, now I'm like, I want to transition and I want to serve the community. So on a smaller scale, more personable and personal scale. So that coupled with the Los Angeles Police Department and its reputation, I'm like, that's a perfect fit. I just wanted that interaction with the community
Okay.
where I was helping people and I could put a face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's easy to say, hey, I'm serving the country, I'm helping the country, but you're just talking about the country.
You don't get that in the military.
Correct.
That interaction with the community and feeling like you're not impacting the community that you're in, really.
And another thing, so, and I think I'm okay to say this, I don't think the Navy would freak out, but they paid us EOD guys, to live off base. They didn't want us on base.
Yeah.
So, and I still remember it to this day because I was living on Channel Islands Boulevard in Ventura County, and they were paying us $450 a month. So we were getting dive pay, demo pay, and special duty assignment pay. So we're already making more money than, you know, and I my highest rank was E5.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already making a substantial amount with those three: hazardous duty, demo, and dive pay. They were also paying $450 a month to live off base. And I still remember to this day, my rent was $525. So I was thinking, I'm paying $75 a month rent. I got the greatest job in the world. I'm working out. I'm diving. I'm with this small group of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was at a point in my life where I thought, if I do the reenlistment, I'm going to be a career Navy.
Because you keep getting deeper and deeper into that track. Yeah.
So I go, if I take the plunge and reenlist and take the $30,000 reenlistment, I'll never do the police thing.
Yeah.
And I made the decision, no, I want to serve the community. I want to put a face to the people that I'm helping and serving. And so I made that decision. I tested. I never looked back. And it was a little bit easier. We talked about this on the run today. Now looking at it, I think when I first met you at the basic course, I probably wasn't thinking it through when I told you it was easy for me to leave the Navy and close that door, because I don't look behind me.
Yeah.
I don't think you should. It's not that you don't look back and take what you've learned and what you've, you know, things you've done well and lessons learned and mistakes you've made, and hold on to those to help forge your future. But you don't dwell on the past. So I think also what helped close that door faster, though, was in 1 month time, I'm out of the Navy and
you're on a new mission.
I'm with a shaved head back through the police academy.
That's right.
Starting over. So, you know, it made that transition pretty easy.
Yeah. You know, and I want to ask you one more thing too. You talk about that service and your desire to serve. I think a lot of people would love to have that desire, that true, like, burning desire to serve others, right? Because it's an honorable way to spend your life. It really is. Where did that come from in you, man?
My parents.
Okay.
Yeah. My parents, my upbringing. You know, we didn't have much, that's for sure. And it was a family, you know, 2 older sisters. So, and I'm the youngest, you know, obviously. So I was always, you know, taught you got to protect your sisters, you know, and it was always putting others first and appreciating the small things. You know, I look at old pictures when, you know, of our kitchen, which was as small as this table, back in Canada. And now, you know, we make it to New Jersey. We've got 1 car my entire life. Again, that lime green 69 Dodge Dart, no air conditioning. But you appreciated that. You knew it was hard work to get that. It's hard work just to get a little bit ahead. And that's what was always instilled, you know, by my father and my mother, to me. You know, everything from, you want a nice lawn, you got to do it yourself. You know, you want a nice little apartment, you've got to keep it clean yourself. It was just all the little things my parents, you know, taught me about: pride of ownership, attention to detail, and respect for others. So it came from them.
Yeah. Now, as you make this transition, I know you experienced this because I experienced the same thing. You have people in the Navy, the dive community, your head shed, your mentors, your teammates, basically they think you're crazy. They think you're crazy for leaving everything that you've worked for. And they try to suck you in to stay in there, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they told me specifically I was going to regret it.
Yeah, I've been told that. Yeah.
And so I would always, throw back at them. So one of our gunners was Gunner Keller, and and then he got transferred out during my tour there, and we got Gunner McFarland. Gunner Keller was transferred to the E.O.D. detachment in Adak, Alaska, and I remember joking with him, laughing, going, "I can't believe you're going to be diving in a dry suit. You're going to be freezing every day."
Oh yeah.
And he jokes back with me. He goes, "When you re-enlist and you graduate advanced gas dive school, et cetera, I'm going to make sure I flag you and get you to Adak, Alaska." So when the guys, Gunner McFarland and Master Chief Tommy Dye and others that were there, they're like, "Chris, you're going to regret it." I go, "No, I'm not. Because I know if I re-enlist, I'm going to Adak, Alaska." And I don't like the cold. I came from Canada, and if it's below 80 degrees, I'm freezing. So,
dude, I've done OTBs in Alaska, but I've never done a dive in Alaska, and I never want to, son. That would be some rough stuff, dude. Now, making this transition, did you have any, I guess, emotional attachment to the community of or the city of Los Angeles? Or was it just the department's reputation that attracted you to that specific department?
it was the department's reputation.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no ties to Los Angeles, no friends, no family. Matter of fact, at that time, when I told my family and friends that I was trying out for the Los Angeles Police Department, my mother was trying to get me to try out for the New York Police Department, which would almost make sense because that's where my idol, my grandfather,
Well, that's
was.
where I would have thought, because it's also another very a department that's held in high regard, right? So that's where I would have thought it makes sense for you to go there.
Absolutely. But I guess on that level, I was on my own path, my own journey.
Yeah.
I'm an individual, and there's nothing wrong with following someone in their footsteps at all. I just wanted to forge my own destination,
Gotcha.
my destiny, my career path. So I was comfortable in knowing I was going to be a policeman like my grandfather was. And I was just as comfortable knowing it was opposite ends of the coast.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that coupled with the great weather, and that wasn't hard either.
Oh, we're going to talk. We're going to talk about California here in just a little bit. Hey guys, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to unpack. Well, not completely unpack, but we're going to unpack a lot of Chris's experience with the LAPD, and let me go ahead and tell you, it's pretty unique. So stand by. You got anything before we take a break, Blake? Ain't nobody gonna call him a fool.
No, I ain't got nothing.
All right, guys, we'll be right back. Dude, I'm so glad you talked about your Navy career, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to go into it, and I don't know how much time we have. But yeah, that's why I actually have this tattoo. My tattoo artist designed this, and when I told him the story, he was doing other stuff. I think it was when he was doing because I have this way before that. He was when he was doing the Black Rose with the I Hope You're Happy teardrop for my daughter Quintessa with misophonia. I was telling him that story, and he one day, a couple months later, emails me a picture, and it's this, and he goes, "Hey, what do you think?" And I go, "That's me on the ocean floor looking up, isn't it?" He goes, "Yep, that's you on your last dive, sitting on the ocean floor, going,
Hey.
am I gonna make it?" So I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
That's pretty sweet, man.
And I said, "You know what? I want that one hidden because it's personal."
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know?
That's an awesome story, man.
I don't know how I'm sounding with this thing. It's the first time I ever talked with headphones.
Yeah, I don't have.
And I know I've got my sinuses going on from that vaccine, but hopefully I'm sounding okay.
You got a radio voice, Chris.
Good times, good times. some of these police stories, because I had this when I got out, I had the top secret clearance from the FBI.
Yeah.
For this unit, so I had to sign the non-disclosure. So when you hear me say things like, "Our investigation led us to this location," I can't sit there and say, "Hey, we were pinging the suspect's phone."
Oh yeah,
I
totally
mean?
understand, man.
So if I'm dancing around something, you know what? I'd love to sit there and say, "Hey, man, we were on this guy's phone. We knew he was inside, waiting for him to come out." I'll have to dress it up like, "Hey, we received some information, or our investigation."
100%, brother.
You'll know what I'm talking about.
I get it, man.
I hope I sound okay with my.
Oh, you sound
Sick
great,
issues
brother.
going
I'd
on.
say the only thing would be to maybe turn the mic a little bit, even if it's blocking our direct line of sight. Just make sure you're talking into that mic. It's been good so far. Okay. It'll just be
talk right into the front of it.
Yeah, so yeah, it's gonna pick the sound up better if you're talking into the front of it for
got
sure.
It. You got it.
But you're like me. I like to look at somebody when I'm talking.
Yeah, I just have. So you want me to turn it like this if I'm talking about?
Yeah, and then you can lean back too and pull that if you want to. You can pull that thing, move it wherever you want it, brother, and don't be afraid to adjust it in the middle of the conversation.
You want it, but again, I for the last few years I taught a class called Mindset for the police department, and so I'm used to speaking, and when I public speak, I'm talking to everybody in the room.
Oh yeah,
so I'm doing my best to focus on you, but I want to bring Blake into it.
Yeah, and the sound, the sound, this thing capturing the sound is the most important part of the conversation. We want them to be able to hear. So everything's going good so far, though. The audio's been great. And you can hear it over your headphones. As long as you're hearing it good in there, they're going to hear it good on the show. So, all right, guys, we're back with my brother Chris Reckleff. Let me tell you guys real quick, actually, the reason why Blake doesn't have a mic. Let me go ahead and own this mistake that I made today, because I make mistakes too. I actually have 2 other podcasting mics, and Brooke and I recorded a Origins episode at my house because Brooke refuses to come here to the studio to record podcasts. She has to do it on the couch at home. So, our other 2 mics are at my house about 15 minutes from here.
Why'd y'all need 4 mics? Why'd y'all need 4 mics? You're just 2 people.
2 mics are here. 2 mics are over there. Yeah. So, but it's all good, man. It's all good. All right. We left off talking through Chris's transition from being a U.S. Navy diver, serving in the Navy for 4 years and 5 months. Awesome stuff. Awesome stories, man. I want to dig into the second half of, well, I guess the majority of your career. How many years did you do at LAPD?
31 years and 11 months.
31 years and 11 months. Holy smokes, man. And yeah, that's all. Yeah. And so, and the thing is, just the capacity that obviously the limited amount that I've heard of some of the things that you did, some of the teams that you served on, serving there in a extremely high capacity, doing specialized missions, in a lot of cases. It was amazing to me. I never knew that there were teams within, local law enforcement agencies that were that highly trained and that specialized. I had no clue, probably because the Floyd County Police Department or the Polk County Police Department or these rural police departments, I mean, I guess there's not a need for teams like that. So they're not out here. I didn't know what was going on. I guess, did you know what was going on, Blake?
No, I mean, I guess I had a little bit of an idea, but in the bigger cities, there's a lot going on and there's a need for it. But I didn't know to the extent of what you guys were doing.
Yeah. Hold on, let me spin this mic back around. So starting off, I mean, I'm assuming, like you said, you leave your dive team. You're cleared hot. You go literally from the Navy to the police academy within a month, and here you are starting all over. You're starting back at base one, right?
Shaved head and all.
Yeah.
Back to square one. And then I remember day one in the police academy, our drill instructor had us write a 1-page, basically, like the old 1 minute, 1 second, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
We had a homework assignment. You got to write about yourself on 1 page. So obviously I included my military career. And when I was in boot camp in the Navy, I was the guide on.
Yeah.
So what happens day 2 after my drill instructor, Jerry Stokes, reads it?
They give you the flags.
They gave me the flag. And I'm like, I got this pole again. So
Big mistake.
For 7 months in the police academy, I'm running around with a flag again. Got to carry that thing everywhere, to all the classrooms, all the group runs, everything.
How intense was the academy? And I'm asking you this because I have to imagine they held you to an extremely high standard. Just because the department, the LAPD, does have such a great reputation as professionals. I mean, I've seen these guys in LA. When I've been to LA one time, it's when I went to do a podcast with Lewis Howes and those guys, and I saw some LAPD officers in uniform. They were standing on a sidewalk. They weren't in a patrol car or anything, but these dudes were squared away. They were physically fit. Their uniforms were perfect from head to toe. They were shaved. I mean, these guys looked like what you would imagine a police officer looked like back in the old days when they took this is not to put police officers down, but in some rural communities, some of the police officers, they get a little sloppy. All right, they get that. I mean, they're doing a hard job. They're doing an awesome job, but I think it's important. That is an important position of service, and everyone that sees you is going to look up to you when you have that uniform on. And these guys I saw in LA, they were the best looking, most squared away officers I've ever seen anywhere in the country. It was amazing. So what was that academy like, man?
Yeah, and just to add to that, 2 things. One, you know the phrase command presence. So you want to look sharp in uniform because people are looking at you. And if you look squared away, maybe you're not squared away for what you're about to whatever the radio call you're going to. But if you walk in acting like you know what's going on, that's half the battle. Yep. So a lot of it is command presence. And LAPD was always known for looking sharp in their uniforms. And it's a simple uniform. It's dark blue, and there's no patches. Mm-hmm. Unless you start, promoting a training officer and sergeant, et cetera. So it's a very clean uniform. There's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so that's where the uniform comes from. And I know a lot of agencies throughout the country have switched to an LAPD style. Not only the uniform, we're also known for the badge. It's a very iconic badge from, remember the show, 1 Adam 12. So it's a very iconic badge. Mm-hmm. So a lot of police agencies have changed their badge to mimic. And even NYPD, New York Police Department, they used to wear the dark blue pants and the light blue shirt. They changed to all blue like LAPD.
Yeah.
But as far as the police academy, it was tough, but it wasn't tough for me. And it's not that I'm any better than anyone else. It's just that where I had just come from.
That's right, yeah.
I'm sitting here diving for, 4 years, almost 4 years on an EOD team, working out every day, cross-training every day. So, to me it was hard because, we had a hill right there. I mean, the police academy is in Elysian Park, which is in Los Angeles, right across the street from Dodger Stadium. It's in the hills. Mm-hmm. There's no flats, and we were running every day. So you're either running up or down, and right outside the classrooms is a straight-up vertical hill right outside the shooting ranges, and it's called Discipline Hill. So when we would mess up, you're at Discipline Hill, sprinting up and down, up and down. I didn't have a problem. Neither did our class leader, Marvin Brent. He was from the Marine Corps. He was super squared away. So the guys that had just transitioned from the military didn't really have much of a problem with the PT aspect.
Yeah.
But, the classroom stuff and learning law, that's a whole different thing. So the PT may be easy, but now you're learning the law.
Yeah.
And then they're putting you through training, what we call sit sims, situation, simulations.
Yeah.
Where they'll come up with a domestic violence call, and it's all role playing, and then you're getting there with your classmate trying to solve the problem and stuff. So those things and the testings, whether it's again law or department policies and procedures and methods of operation, those were the harder things for me. The shooting, no, again, coming from the military, didn't have a problem with any of the shooting at that time. So I go from the military having a rifle and a Beretta 92F, here I am going to the Los Angeles Police Department, and what do they issue me? A 6-shot revolver. I was one of the last classes to get the revolver.
What caliber do you remember? 357?
No, 38.
38 special.
38. I just bought it for $68. They let me buy my gun when I retired. $68. Smith & Wesson 4-inch barrel.
Boy, that's a deal right there, brother. That Smith & Wesson is not a cheap gun.
Yeah. So, it was odd going from a semi-automatic pistol to now I'm, carrying a revolver.
Yeah.
That was probably my only thing. And at that time, our agency wasn't carrying rifles unless you were in SWAT. So there was a slow progression to where we are today with what we can carry. I think it was 3 classes after me, academy classes after me, that they had transitioned to the Beretta. And I remember at that time being mad because now I'm going out on a patrol as a rookie with a revolver. And then these couple classes later, they've got, a Beretta.
Yeah, which is much more effective in a firefight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but, there wasn't too many difficulties for me at all at the academy. It was 7 months long.
We talk about that high standard, and again, I think the high standard is obvious given the department's reputation. Do you feel like, or have you seen any evidence that those standards have changed or been compromised at all over the course of 30 years? And by no means is this a opportunity for us to put anybody down. I think it's just I want to hear an accurate assessment of that because it's a conversation that's being had around standards that our police officers have to go through. Are they where are you at with that?
Well, where I'm at with it is, number one, I'm not worried about putting somebody down.
Yeah,
because I'm a straight shooter.
I know you are, brother.
Yeah, the standards have slipped a little bit. They're still getting very quality. People that are applying and recruiting and getting them into the academy, but the standards have definitely slipped. And a lot of it has to do with political correctness, not wanting to hurt someone's feelings, not wanting to tell somebody, hey, guess what? Come back and reapply when you lose 30 pounds or 20 pounds, whatever it is. It's, we've had people that get turned away and will sue. They'll sue and say, weight discrimination, you name it, LA will sue. This is California, right? So slightly, in my opinion, over 3 decades, there's still quality candidates, don't get me wrong. But instead of 1 or 2 squeaking in, there's always that 1 or 2 or 3.
Always. It doesn't matter how hard you make it.
Yeah, now instead of 1 or 2, there's 10 or 12, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, it's amazing. Hearing you talk about the academy was 7 months long, and I was a police for a couple years, and our academy was probably, it was like 4 or 6 weeks long, I guess. And this is no put down of our local agency. They just don't have the funding. But we got hired on, and they have this closet full of old worn uniforms. Some of them, the stitches are coming out of the patch, and they're like, all right, guys, y'all go in there and find whatever fits you best. Get what you can. And they're like, find a vest that fits you. And I remember looking at the tags, and I'm like, all these things expired like 5 years ago. The vest did. And they're like, oh, that's all we can afford. And, it's just so sad that it's that way. for the local police. But even above that, we were talking earlier how people are people, right? The police in LA are serving essentially the same people that we're serving in our local community here. They're going to do the same kind of things, just much more often in LA. But how often it is, I don't think should determine how stringent of training you get. Like, it blows my mind that there's not a standard. Like, if you're going to be a police officer, this is what you've got to do. Like, this is what the mandate is. These are the classes you got to go through. You can learn different states' laws. But when you said that earlier, it was 7 months long, I remember thinking, man, that's serious. But that's how it should be everywhere, you know?
I agree with you 100%. And you're right. It is, for a smaller town, the funding at times.
Yeah.
Depending on what city or town it is. I mean, we have Beverly Hills next to us, and they have a very squared away police department. They also have the funding.
Right.
It's a very rich city. But, it's maybe a little too early to talk about this, but with the recent anti-police sentiment that we've had since last summer, my old agency, LAPD, the budget was $500 million a year.
Wow.
They just slashed it because all this anti-police, defund the police movement, that people just don't understand what that means.
Uh-huh.
They slashed it by $150 million. That's 34-something%. And that's going to cost them. The citizens are not going to get the service they deserve, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah, because the compromise almost has to come in the quality of the person that you hire. That's the quality of people that LAPD gets versus what Floyd County PD gets is dependent on the pay. Like, that's why someone who is going to go do a good job ain't going to walk into that uniform closet and say, I'm not going to walk around this town looking slouchy with no training. I'm going to go somewhere else that's going to pay me. Not that all the officers around here look slouchy, but I mean, really, like, if I paid with my own money to get my uniforms altered so that they fit me good because I wanted to look good, but that had to come out of my own pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And you shouldn't be the one having to do that.
Right.
Your employer should be.
But it to your point, you cut the funds, you cut the quality of people that are out there serving you. So I guess it's kind of beating a dead horse, but it just kind of, when you talked about that, I just thought, man, it should be a standard across the board what it takes to be a police.
That's an interesting concept to me, and I don't know if it's ever been discussed before, but wouldn't that be a pretty cool concept? And to have, like you're saying, to have a nationwide standard, not a federally mandated standard, but a nationwide standard for that job of serving your community as a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, and I was going to see if you were going to put that in there. As long as it doesn't transfer over to the government.
No, I never want that to happen.
Yeah, I know, because we're all downhill from there. If you leave the government in charge of policing. I think a national standardization of, maybe some tactics.
Yeah,
and that's not hard to do because there's an association. It's called the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and it's made up from all the chiefs of police throughout the entire country, whether it's a small town, small city, big city, all over the country.
That's it.
They meet yearly. I have no problem making a standard, with some public influence. If they want to have some public on the board, some citizens to also, sit in and maybe give their opinions. But I think there's not an issue with that. The issue comes as long as the federal government's not
100%. This is easy. This would be something easy to implement.
Right.
It sounds like, and that standard of having a nationwide set of standards, I think that'd be an amazing improvement to our law enforcement communities. And I just want to give one caveat. The reason I started this conversation revolving around this subject with I prefaced it with no disrespect, is because I am so thankful for everybody that is out here in my community right now to keep me safe. Literally, if I need them, I can. Can you realize that we can? Do y'all realize how much of a luxury it is for you to be able to pick up a phone if something goes wrong and someone is coming to help you. No, you don't realize how much of a luxury that is. 98% of us take that for granted. Do you not realize 100 years ago, maybe a little more than 100, I forget, it's 2020 whatever now, but it wasn't too long ago that no one was coming to help you, period. Right? And it is just so awesome that we live in a nation where there are enough of our citizens that are willing, especially in this environment, to raise their hand and say, I will do this job for my community. You can't disrespect anybody for anybody that chooses to raise their hand and do that has got my respect, even if they have some improvements that they need to make. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Where did you go after you graduated the academy, Chris?
So, we call it probationary status, or what most departments would call you're a rookie, and that's a 12-month period. Towards the end of the academy, though, some detectives came in. It was like the last month or two. And they came into the classroom, and they were from a unit called the High School Buy Team. And basically, it's an undercover officer that infiltrates high schools, trying to find out where all the drugs are coming from that are being sold to students, right? And the whole idea is to stem that, get students, not being able to purchase drugs on the school grounds, and to ultimately trace where the drugs are coming from. It's always an adult selling them, so they could do search warrants and arrest the people, basically the main drug dealers that are supplying a student or several students to supply it to, everyone throughout the school. So they're always looking for people that look young. And they had come to the class, they gave their presentation, and then there were several of us that they approached. I was one of them, and they said, hey, we like how young you look. Would you be interested in, coming to this unit? Let us know. Here's our phone number. And if you decide, we'll take a look at you and we'll test you, see if you can pass the polygraph, etc. I didn't think too much about it because I was still in that regimented military. I'm a uniform guy.
Yeah.
Uniform. And now I'm 23 years old. And I go off on a patrol, and I happen to tell my first training officer. And he was your typical 20-year salty training officer that smoked cigarettes as you're driving. Still in shape, but that was just the genre back then. That was that was the lifestyle they led. And
culture,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, the culture. So we're on the night shift, and I happen to tell, he's asking me about how the academy went and asking me about my military career, because you got to form a little bit of a bond. Even though I'm new and I don't know what I'm doing per se, he's relying on me saving him just like I'm relying on him saving me, and vice versa. So I tell him about that, and he's just this grouchy old timer that's been on patrol his whole career. And he goes, oh, you don't want to do that. Don't ever do that. That's stupid. Blah, 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 blah. After 1 month with him during my second month, out on patrol, my rookie status, I get assigned a new training officer because that training officer was on his vacation for the month. And same thing. Now I'm rebonding my second month with my new training officer, learning the ropes in the field. And I bring that up about the high school buy team approached me. And he goes, what'd you tell him? I told him, no, I don't want to do that. And he goes, you're crazy. And he drives me directly to the station. And I don't remember who the sergeant is, but he brings me in the sergeant's office. And he goes, hey, Sarge, sit down with Chris. Chris was asked by the high school buy team to join, and he told them no. So that sergeant tells me, he goes, Chris, that is a lifetime opportunity. Not many people get to do something like that.
Yeah.
This uniform will always be here. There will always be an open seat in a black and white car.
I get it,
in
yeah.
a patrol uniform. You can go to any specialized division and assignment and not like it and always come back patrol. They'll welcome you with their arms open. He goes, call them. You should do it. I go, I don't know. I'm 23. I don't see how I look 17. I'm kind of militaristic. I still have my military mannerisms about me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, call him up. So I called up the detective that runs the unit, Ev Berry. And I said, this is, probationary officer, Chris Reckleff, and I'd like to apply. So he says, come on down. I go down. I take the polygraph, pass that, and they accept me. And they hold you for a few months to start growing your hair out because they want you to start looking undercover like a student. And they put you through a couple months of training. They take you out to Hollywood to buy, and it's a test. They'll send you out on the streets of Hollywood Boulevard. You have to buy dope. They'll send you to Venice Beach, California, the boardwalk. You got to find someone selling dope, buy dope. And it's just to get you into the drug world.
Now, when you go out on these training missions, are you carrying concealed or?
Not at that time.
Okay.
What they do for the high school buy team is they I could say this because the last mayor, not our current mayor, the last mayor disbanded the program. And I'll end with that, and I'll tell you why. But they actually take your ID from you and your gun, and they issue you, or at the time they issued you, again, the unit's no longer in existence. They take you to the DMV at 6 o'clock in the morning before it opens, and you are issued a real driver's license that says you're 17, and you change your name. And they always have you keep your first name because you're used to being called by it.
Yeah.
And they usually encourage you to use your mother's maiden name as your last name. So that's what I did. So I had a real driver's license from the DMV that said I was 17 years old with a different name. And that's what you use when you ultimately go undercover. But on those training missions, you're not carrying a gun because they're always spotting you. All the seasoned detectives are out there. They're spotting you. They're in distance.
So they're like lane graders.
Yeah.
They're seeing how you interact and making sure that nothing goes because I imagine you're out there looking to buy drugs. You're in some circles of rough individuals, and you could get in a hairy situation. So that's
Absolutely.
why I was wondering that.
Yeah, and they teach you, what happens if it goes sideways, if you get robbed, what to do, how to act, and it's just to see how you interact in the real world. So I always just would wear my surf shorts and flip flops and just walk around, and it was pretty cool.
Not what you thought you were going to be doing, probably.
No, and part of me was like, man, did I make the right decision? Did I make the right decision? So I get through the couple months of training, and then they send me undercover in high school. And nobody knows, not even the principal knows there's an undercover, who it is, or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I go there, and at this time, on television, the #1 television show was called 21 Jump Street with Johnny Depp. And that's what he played, an undercover officer in the high schools.
Yeah, yeah.
So here I am in a high school in Los Angeles, and I'm looking at the students to my left and right, and their book covers are 21 Jump Street because they're all watching the television show, and I'm like, I'm really doing it.
Dude, I forgot about book covers.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I get through that. They have you do a semester. And your goal is to not just, if you can tell pretty quickly if someone's trying to sell you drugs because they want to be your friend, like they think, oh, you're cool, you're not buying from them because that's not a real drug dealer. At the time it was like weed and coke. But if someone's trying to sell you a joint and you can tell they want to be your friend, they're not really supplying drugs.
They just want to hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't, buy from them. Your goal was to find the real suppliers that were selling dope and ultimately get them to lead you to where they're getting it from off campus. So then you can get an address, detectives could write a search warrant, etc. And it was so much harder than I could have ever imagined.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm watching this show on television with Johnny Depp and everything's easy. But when you're doing it for real, it was stressful. And it was stressful in that I would buy drugs from you in the morning, right? The goal was to buy as much drugs as you can from as many different people. And I would maybe know your first name, but wouldn't know who you are, your last name or anything else. I may know you have math period 6. So how it would work was I'd buy drugs from Blake, but I wouldn't know any more about him other than his name is Blake. Then at the end of the school, I'd have to drive downtown to police headquarters, going through the back door because your identity's hidden. They called it 650 status. So you don't have police ID, you don't have your gun. You couldn't go to the police academy, police credit union, any of the police functions, police, running races, organizations, fundraisers, retirements, anything. You're removed from the police world.
Yeah.
And you would go there and you would look through the high school books to try to find Blake's picture in there and go, okay, this is him. This is who sold me the cocaine this morning. And that's how we would get the IDs, through the yearbooks. Or if they weren't in the yearbook, and not everybody takes the yearbook pictures, I would know Blake worked, or was in math class period 6. So then our detectives would have ways to get the roster for math class period 6, say, okay, there's a Blake Jones or, whatever, and that'll be him. Okay. The way it got hard was this: as the weeks and months went by, so I'm buying from Blake a couple times in the morning, and now I find out from somebody that you sell drugs, and I see you during lunch recess, so I hit you up, and I buy from you. Blake sees me, but I don't know he's watching me buy dope.
Yeah.
So then later at school's over, Blake hits me up. Hey, bro, I saw you buying from Chad this morning. What's up with that? You got to be quick on your feet. Oh, man, bro, I was looking for you. My sister called me, and, she needed some, and I was looking for you. I couldn't find you. I ran into this dude, Chad, and, Chad hooked me up real quick. Sorry, bro, won't happen again. So that was stressful, number one. The other thing was, unlike the television show, you weren't going to the football games. You weren't going to the parties. You weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that was when you ultimately go to court, the defense is, oh, Blake only sold drugs to Chris, Officer Reckleff, because they were friends. Chris went over Blake's house or whatever.
Yeah.
I would be able to get on a witness stand and say the only time I saw Blake was during my work hours, which was during the school, on school campus.
Yep.
So what would happen is Friday would come, you're at school, and you would say, hey, man, I'm having a party at my house. My parents are gone for the weekend. It's going to be a big bash on Saturday. And I got to play it off like I'm going to be there. Yeah, I'll be there, bro. I'll be there. And I don't show up because I can't. I'm not allowed to go.
Mm-hmm.
So now Sunday night, everybody's watching Arsenio Hall. That's the biggest show on television, right? All I'm doing is sitting at home stressing about what am I going to say to Chad when I see him tomorrow at school? Why wasn't I at his house party?
Yeah.
And as the weeks and months go by, you start running out of excuses. And you start forgetting, what excuse did you use last time?
Oh, I could only imagine. Yeah.
It starts getting hard.
And did the department leave that up to like your creativity? Like, were you expected to be creative, or did they kind of guide you in those responses?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
You had a detective handler. So every day after school, whether you bought drugs or not, you would go back to police headquarters through the back door, and they would sit down and basically debrief you.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, hey, Chris, how'd your day go? We call it getting narked. When the kids would start saying, hey, Chris is a cop, he's a narc, And I said, no, still doing good. Starting to have a little trouble with this one guy. He's starting to ask too many questions. Because what will happen is, a couple months into it, suddenly someone's having a house party. And once again, you're not there, even though you say you'll be there. All it takes is one person at a party to go, hey, man, anyone ever see Chris at any of these parties?
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is that one thought. And then the whole room goes, yeah, man, anyone ever been to Chris's house? You don't have a house to bring them to.
Yeah.
And suddenly you start feeling the heat a little bit. And again, as the months go on, it gets a little bit harder to come up with excuses. You start forgetting what excuse you use with this person or that person. It starts getting a little tricky. But there's ways of getting people's mind right. Because you know how people, no different than gang members, everybody's tough when they're with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
But you get them alone, you can put some fear into them.
Oh, yeah.
So what I would do, I didn't get narked. That's what we called it. We had guys that got chased out of school the first week. They already were getting narked.
They just weren't cut out for that job.
They weren't cut out.
Yeah.
I made it all the way through. And not that I was better than anyone else. I just, I realized, hey, Sunday, wasn't screw off day for Chris. It was, I may be off, but I got school tomorrow. I got to start coming up with valid reasons, new
Alibis.
There
That's
you
right.
go. So I went through that, and I had one instance towards the end where 2 or 3 people, I'd walk by and I'd hear somebody say, like, there goes the narc. And I don't turn my head, but I know they're talking to me. But I know who it is by this point. And by then, you've ditched school so many times. You've been chased by the school police. They used to put, we had a big, like 12-foot fence perimeter of the school. And the school police, this is the tricky stuff they would do. They used to put blue ink on the permanent ink on the top of the rung of the fence.
Yeah.
At lunch, we would run for the fence because we're going to ditch class and go buy some dope off campus. And that was the goal, to go find the houses. Hey, I know this dude, Joe sells it. His house is a couple blocks from school. Roger that. Hey, at lunchtime, we'll jump the fence. So we'll run for it. The school police will be chasing us. We'll hop the fence, and you have blue ink all over your clothes and stuff. And you're like, oh, man. So by the time I started getting narked, I had been there so long, I knew everybody and what their classes were, and what, people that don't want to learn, every class they go to, the first thing they do halfway through their class is they grab the hall pass so they can use the bathroom, right? So you get the bad guy's routine down. So, I knew this one guy that was starting to narc me and start telling everybody I was a cop. So I knew what his routine was. So I just waited for him one day and followed him into the bathroom. And granted, they're 17, 18, so, the juvenile side.
Mm-hmm.
You're not putting your hands on anybody, but, just like you could talk into a bullhorn without using a curse word, and you could put the fear in us like you did this weekend, you could put the fear into somebody verbally, and that's all it would take to get someone to stop narking you. You know what I mean? You get them alone in the bathroom, and you have a little talking to them.
Yeah.
And,
And that in and of itself, I imagine that they're thinking, this guy, if this guy was a police officer, he wouldn't be cornering me in a bathroom, talking to me this way. Like, to me, it plays into the reality of your role, man.
And the other thing that was tricky, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we called it tripping. So this is the pager era day. We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
So if we got a page from the office, like, with a code, that meant, hey, you got to get to a payphone and call. And if you're going to trip, which meant you're going to get in your car. I had a little Volkswagen Bug. They always wanted you to be the driver, right? So if they said, hey, Chris, we're all going to this dude's house. He's got a huge stash of coke he just got. Well, you want to get to that house.
Yeah.
Because you want to get the address and give it to your detective handler, and ultimately there's going to be a search warrant on it. That's the whole goal. It's unrealistic to sit there and tell the students, you guys go, hey, bro, we're going to go to this guy's house. We're going to buy a bunch of coke, whatever. You go, roger that, I'll follow you. No, man, just hop in our car.
Oh, yeah.
You're supposed to be the driver, and the whole reason behind it is safety, that you have control of where you're going if it gets haywire. That's just not reality. So I'm like, okay, I'll jump in your car. I know I'm not supposed to do that. I jump in your car. The first time I jumped in somebody else's car, in the back seat on the floor was a shotgun. And that's when you're like, this is why I'm supposed to always be in charge of tripping, driving my own vehicle.
And you're unarmed. Right?
Again, all you have is, I had a driver's license, a real driver's license, said I was 17. That's it.
Wow, man.
And because you don't have a cell phone, it's usually what it is when they say, hey, if you're going to trip off campus, get to a payphone and call the office and let them know where you're going to be. If you ask a student, hey, where do you live? You know what they tell you? Oh, I live that way. They don't know. They don't even know their own addresses.
Yeah.
So you don't have an address to tell them. And what you guys say, hey, we're going to go jump in the car real quick. Let's go. I can't say, hey, hold on. I got to run to a payphone.
You blow your cover, right? Yeah, you're raising a red flag right then.
You got it. So there is an element of danger, and you go into a crack house, and it's just you, and you have nobody, none of your detective handler, nobody knows. But they got it, So, I'd buy the dope, and I'd be driving down to the office, and I'd stop at a payphone, call my boss, say, hey, you're not going to be happy, sir, but I had a trip. I went to this house. I couldn't get to a payphone. And they understand it. I just didn't tell them about like the shotgun in the back seat or any of that.
Yeah.
But, they were happy to hear like, okay, you got the address, where you bought it. So now we can write a search warrant, et cetera. So, and then ultimately at the end of the school year, they do what's called a roundup. So they'll arrest all the students at once and hit all the search warrants on all the houses from the adults that are providing the kids the dope on one day at one time.
That'd be essentially, I think that'd be the only tactical way to do it without giving away what was happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole bunch of detective units will be serving all the search warrants. 2 detectives will go into the school and go to the guidance counselor, get the principal or the dean and say, hey, we need the following 20 students. They would pull them out of class, bring them in if they were there that day,
Yeah.
And they'd bring them in, they'd arrest them, they'd put them in their cars, and they would drive them to a remote site where I'm at. And then they'd pull up, and I would say, yeah, that's Johnny, that's Susie. And,
Did they see you?
Oh, yeah. And that's when, I don't use bad language, but they're using bad language at me.
They were.
Oh, yeah. But it was a unique experience, a very unique experience. I think it did a lot of good because the goal was to stop the kids from progressing to if and when they graduated high school.
Yeah.
That they didn't continue that in college and go down a worse path.
Yeah.
One guy his goal was to be an LA City fireman. And he was selling dope big time.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought from him, and he'll never be a fireman again, or never had the opportunity because this was on his records. It was to get their minds right. And again, like I said, the real punishment was to the adults that are providing the dope to the kids to sell on the campus.
Yeah.
That was the main mission.
That's the main target, yeah.
But our last mayor, Antonio Villaraigosa, thought that it wasn't fair to the kids that there was a police officer on the campus undercover. So he actually canceled the program because LAPD, like most police departments, has become so politicized. Why even have a chief of police almost? The mayor runs the department almost to a percentage or
how do you feel about that decision after seeing the impact that you made while you did that job?
I think it was a bad decision. I think it's a good decision to have them in there because, there's a ton of schools in LA Unified School District. There's not an undercover officer in each one.
Mm-hmm.
But for the students to think there may be, that's a deterrent in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now when you see a news article, hey, LAPD has disbanded this controversial unit, that unit's it was in existence over 20 years.
No, it's free reign.
Yeah, now it's like, no penalty. Kind of like what we're looking at today. People do a crime, and now half these states have no bail. You get booked and you get released.
And that's got to be frustrating, dude.
It is. It is to a degree. But again, I'm so thankful that I was pulled aside and that sergeant says, no, that'll be a lifetime memory. You can always come back to patrol. And I'm so glad I did it.
It's such an interesting insight, and it makes for such for me personally, a captivating story because I don't know anyone else in my life who's done that job and then has also been able to articulate it in such a powerful way. And I just can't imagine how exhausting it had to be to because I know me and Chris, you've taught, you've been an instructor. Me, when you're in that. Whatever role you're in, if you're in an instructor role, if you're in a teaching role, if you're in an undercover role, it's exhausting not to be yourself.
It was very mentally fatiguing.
It had to have been.
So much so, I had success that they asked me to do another school. And I'm like, oh, no, one and done for me.
Yeah.
You're not going to send me next school year to some other high school. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
I was point blank with them. And I had no problem. I was itching to get back to uniform patrol.
Okay.
I love wearing a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So
what was going on in the city at that time as you moved from this undercover role, performing this specialized task. Now you're getting back out in the mix of, like you said, a uniformed position.
Well, I got stopped from going back to uniform.
Did you really?
Yeah. So after telling my boss, this is what amazing mentor, Ev Berry, and I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. He's obviously been retired for a long time now, still doing great. He's such a great leader that he's like, okay, Chris, I understand Chris doesn't want to go through this again. He actually reached out to another detective that ran a unit called the Complaint Investigative Buy Team. And it was an adult buy team. And it was basically people, it was fielding complaints that would be called in. Like someone would call the police department and say, hey, I think my neighbors across the street are selling dope.
Yeah.
Okay. So it no longer did I have to play a kid. I got my gun back and my ID back. But Ed Berry reached out to this detective, says, hey, you should take a look at Chris. I think he'll do good in your unit. They reached out to me. They gave me a position. So I continued growing the hair long. But now instead of shaving every day, I got to grow a beard. And I was buying dope throughout the entire city, from the beaches, communities, to the valley, to South Central, to the east side. And it was awesome. It was an awesome experience. At times, you got to learn. I was always good at that time buying heroin, because by then I looked like a junkie. I really looked, I had that look of a heroin user. So I was buying a lot of heroin downtown, a lot of heroin in the valley and on the east side. Mm-hmm. And then I also was partnered up with a female officer. So by now, because we've been undercover so long, we passed the 12-month probationary stage. So we get bumped up instead of a P1, police officer 1 rank, which means you're a rookie, which means you can get fired at will. Yeah. So now I'm a police officer 2, even though I didn't do the 12 months on the streets in a patrol uniform.
That's right, yeah.
We still got upgraded to P2, and I'm still under this undercover status. And her and I were able to buy dope throughout the city. Because we would just hold hands, walk down the street. People think we're a couple, and boom, boom, boom.
Now, during this phase, were there any close calls, any hairy situations, or was it chill for the most part? I mean,
it's definitely not chill. Sometimes
I don't know. I've never bought drugs, so I don't know how this works.
Certain times you knew that, hey, I'm going to have to leave my gun in the car. At that point, they had sent me through semi-auto school. So that was cool.
So you got your Beretta now.
Got my, that, and I bought a compact Smith & Wesson, 8+1 9 mil. But I still would carry my snub nose undercover because it was the easiest to conceal.
Oh, yeah.
At times I would drive up. I know, like, this guy sells dope on the corner. So I'd pull up in my little undercover Volkswagen Bug. I think it was like a 1974. I would purposely take off my shirt, barefoot, and I would sit on my revolver. And then the dope dealer would come up to the car, and he's seeing you shirtless with a pair of ripped up shorts, and it was a quick deal through the, through the window. There was plenty of hairy instances. I won't get into too many, but I recall one when my female partner and I got locked inside a crack house in South Central. And that was the height of when rock cocaine was being sold, especially in South Central Los Angeles. And you get locked into you walk into a house and they lock that door of a crack house. This was the times where SWAT was using their armored vehicles on search warrants to go right through walls to rip, on these crack houses. That was the era back then. They've obviously matured and advanced their tactics to not do that in most cases. But at that heightened time where crack cocaine was so prevalent, when you walk in and they shut that armored door and bolted shut, you're not getting out of there till they let you out. And that is hairy.
So these are some like fortified positions. I mean, these people are dealing mass quantities of drugs, quite obviously.
Yes.
Dealing with large amounts of cash, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you got to keep your cool. It's almost relatable to breathing air underwater. You can't start freaking out. So you're looking around.
You better not have a panic attack in that situation.
You're looking around and you're like, I can't get out. I can't get out the front door. And there's those security bars on all the windows. And you're looking at these hardcore drug dealers and gangsters. Most of them are gangsters as well. And there's guns laying there. And they're dealing dope. And you're buying. And all you want to do is get the deal over with and get out. But you can't panic. But that all goes back to, they don't just throw you into this. You get mentored by the undercover officers that are, their tour is coming up and they're getting ready to leave. They teach you what worked for them, what dress to wear, how to act, words to say, etc. So it was constant acting, role playing, if you will, and visualization. Knowing, hey, tomorrow we're going to try to infiltrate this house. And it's not easy to walk up to a door and knock on it. They open, if you're lucky and they open for you, they're going to want to know how you found it. And you better be quick on your feet. Have. So you've got to visualize this in your head. Hey, if they say this, I'm going to say that. If they act like this, I'm going to act like this. And it was the same thing after I did that for 2 years.
Man, 2 years?
I then taught, I was basically the mentor for people that wanted to, that were fresh coming in.
Yeah.
Now I was in that position of, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what I said in this situation. So it was kind of like the passing of the guard. But they don't just throw you out there and say, hey, go knock on that door and try to infiltrate and buy dope.
Yeah, yeah. Man. That would be, I don't know if I could handle that job. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I could handle that job. And this is one of the things that really, I don't know what the word is, amazes me about you, Chris, or whatever it may be, is man, you've spent 31 years dealing with these individuals that are essentially the scum of society. Right? I mean, look, a drug addict is not scum. A drug addict is someone that's bound up in that addiction, right? It's the one that is selling the drugs to me that is the scum. It's the one that's promoting this thing that is destroying their community for some money. Those people are, and so that's just one instance of having to deal with literally the scum of society. And it's so encouraging and amazing to me, brother, that you've been able to perform these tasks and deal with these type of people for so long, yet your outlook on life is still so magnificent, man. Your mindset, your goals, the love that you have in your heart for other people. It's just like, how, man? How do you maintain that? How do you hold on to that for so long? It takes such a special person to be you, brother.
I don't think, I appreciate those kind words, but I'm not any more special than anyone else. That's just how I feel. I mean that. I just have a desire to help people.
Yeah.
When you talk about the addicts, I have a lot of friends, a lot of best friends that are recovering alcoholics, and drug addicts.
Yeah.
One of which is a former partner, and she's been sober for 7 years. Amazing.
Praise God,
amazing woman. You're right. It's the drug dealers.
In my mind, in my perspective, yeah.
And in my experience.
Okay, perfect then.
I've got family members that have had their issues with substance abuse.
Yeah.
Love them dearly.
It doesn't discriminate, man.
That absolutely does not. So now that I leave the narcotics undercover world, I get to chop my hair off and my beard and put a uniform on.
And this is where I want to know what's going on. Like, what's the main problem that you guys are facing as an agency at that time?
At that time, that's when everybody knows it as the Rodney King incident.
Yeah.
Had occurred, and the riots had occurred. and we're dealing with the aftermath of that and gaining the public confidence back in our department. After the first acquittal of the officers, there was a riot in South Central, and then the officers were retried for violation of civil rights on a federal level. There was a conviction, but it was regaining. I went to patrol in uniform, so now, and they put me with a training officer, even though I'm a tenured officer per se, and I use air quotes. I hadn't been on the patrol aspect of it.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're smart. They put me with a training officer, and now I'm going into an era of trying to regain public trust, which to me was a perfect opportunity because that's why I was there, to serve the community.
Yeah.
And it just made me work harder in gaining public trust. And I had that desire. And then furthermore, I was mentored by a sergeant, James Oberly. He's my mentor on this job. He retired about 10 years ago. And it was fun speaking at his retirement because it's always fun to roast somebody else. But he's an actual legend on the job. He was the original, what we call K9-1. He started the K9 for the police department.
Okay.
Him and some others, and he was K9-1.
So you got a huge legacy then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's from our Metropolitan Division. Metropolitan Division is what is characterized as the best of the best. The officers that work the hardest come from the gang units, look sharpest in uniform, physically fit. It's where K9's out of, SWAT is out of, our mounted unit, and then there's 2 line platoons that are the high. You're focusing on the high crime areas throughout the city. You're driving around in a dual purpose car, not a black and white, just like a Ford Crown Victoria with just lights in the window.
Yeah. Almost like a special operations unit.
Right, but but it's a uniform.
Uniform, okay.
So he had come from that world, in the K9 world. He promoted out, made sergeant. And by the grace of God, I'm working a patrol division, and he took a liking to me because he just saw how hard, or at least I was attempting to work hard. He obviously took a liking to me and said, hey, you need to go to Metro Division. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm cut out for that. I'd like to. I think, at this point, you have to be a training officer, which is a P3, and I'm a P2 at that time. He goes, there's a P3 training officer spot coming up here in this patrol division. I want you to take it. So I think there was 3 spots, and 100 people applied for it. I was one of the 3 that got it. So I got promoted to training officer. I worked as a training officer for 2 years. So at this point, I have about 8 years on the job, and I'm loving it. I'm in uniform. That's what I love. And he goes, you got to try out for Metropolitan Division. And at that point, the goal was SWAT, 100%. So I put in, and I get accepted for Metro. So you can kind of see the way my career is going. I try out once to apply for the police department. I make it. I try out for the high school buy team. I get it. I try out for the complaint buy team. I get it. I try out for training officer. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's just going smoothly at that point.
But I think your reputation is preceding you at this point right off the bat, man. I mean,
again, I'm nothing special, but I was working hard.
That's
for
right.
You're
putting in the work. I mean, we all have to earn our reputation, and reputation is extremely important. And I think it's something that a lot of us, that when we start out on some new journey, we're not thinking about our reputation from the very beginning. But it's pretty important because that's when it starts. Same thing in SEAL training. Your reputation starts day 1 of buds.
Right.
I mean, and that will carry with you throughout your entire career in the SEAL teams. So I think you were crushing that, man.
So and this is a turning point, if you will, in my career. So I try out for Metro and I get accepted and I go. And now I'm in a division of 200 officers that are the best of the best of a 9,000 personnel police department.
9,000.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm with what's considered the top 200. Again, that 200 makes up K9, SWAT, our mounted unit, our horse unit, and the 2 line platoons. So you first go to the line platoons, and you got to prove yourself there. And then if and when there's tryouts for SWAT or K9 or the mounted unit, you can put in for it. but you got to prove yourself on the line platoons. So I work with my my brother, Michael Henderson, longtime partners. He and I were in Metro, and my goal, he knew it, was to go to SWAT. And there was like an unwritten rule. You had to do at least a year in Metro before you can apply. And about 10 months into it, there happened to be SWAT tryouts. And some of the guys like, hey, Chris, you going to throw your name in a hat? You going to try out? And I'm like, no, man. One, I don't have a year. Two, I'm working with my brother, Michael Henderson. So I'm having a blast working with Mikey. I want to keep working with him. I'm never leaving Metro Division. So I'll try out for SWAT in a year, 2, 3, 4 years from now. No big deal. I don't care.
So you were getting filled up. It was a pretty action packed.
It was awesome.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So working the streets, what we call hooking and booking, making a ton of arrests. And then we have an incident. I don't know if you guys had heard about it here, but they called it the Rampart scandal. Rampart was one of the patrol divisions, and the gang unit there had an issue with one of the officers. His name is Rafael Perez. So I like to refer to it as the Rafael Perez issue. I hate how they blanket it as Rampart crash was corrupt. Now, there was one dirty cop, Rafael Perez, who was doing dirty things. He was a corrupt cop. Simple as that. He ultimately gets caught, and the city's in an uproar. Similar to, there's no riots, but it was on the front page of the LA Times every day.
You're losing that trust again.
You got it.
Yeah.
And our chief of police at the time was Bernard Parks. And he and the district attorney, Gil Garcetti, were not cohesive together. They were always bumping heads, right? And Gil Garcetti basically said, hey, he's the DA of LA County. He says to all, and now at this point, Mike Henderson and I were making the most arrests of any Metro unit, partnership there. We were hooking and booking. We were in court all day and going back at it, right?
No kidding, man.
And I'm not bragging, but I'm just saying that's just the way it was.
You guys worked well.
Right.
That was a swim. We called it a swim pair. You guys were crushing it, man.
Exactly. And that was the reason I wasn't worried about SWAT. I'm like, I'll try out in a few years.
Yeah.
So what happens is when this Rafael Perez scandal comes, the district attorney tells all his DAs, hey, if you're trying any cases and, you think there may be some inconsistencies, close the case, dismiss it, send the case to internal affairs to look at, the police department. And any defendant, and we're talking about hardcore defendant, I'm doing criminal cases where people are getting 2 life sentences. They're always going to complain and say they're innocent. So suddenly, Mike Henderson and I, at this point in my career, this is 1999, so I've got 10 years on the job. I've got 0 personnel complaints in my package because I treated everyone with respect, no matter how evil the person was. Suddenly, Mike Henderson and I get 3 personnel complaints, and we get sent to what's called a board of rights. Basically, you, as the officer, are the defendant. And the board is made up of 2 police captains and a civilian. We get sent to a board of rights, and I can't tell you what it's like to stand. We call it your Sharp A. You have the short sleeves uniform with no tie, and then you have the long sleeve, you wear the tie. We call them Sharp A.
Like a dress uniform almost?
It's the same uniform. It's just that it's Class A and Class C.
Yeah.
But for Metro, we don't call it Class A. We call it Sharp A. You better look sharper than sharp.
Gotcha.
You're in your long sleeve, tie, everything's immaculate. All your duty gear shined, everything. It's like you're going, you're on the parade duty,
Yeah.
They called it the Oven. It's a Bradbury building downtown LA. That's where the Board of Rights trials go on. So we're defendants. We get removed from the field, barred from public contact, and we're defendants.
Just because of these 3
complaints. Yeah, complaints by suspects that the jury's already seen them, these cases, and convicted these people, sent them to prison. But now all these prisoners are finding out, hey, man, send a file a complaint against the officers saying they lied, planted evidence, whatever it is. And, hey, man, if they convict these officers, man, maybe you'll get released from prison.
And you're saying you're having to defend your own case? You're having to defend yourself, basically?
Yeah,
against this board of
you'll have a police representative to state your case for you, but it's in internal affairs putting on a case against you.
This has got to be leaving a bad taste in your mouth at this point.
The part that left a bad taste, and you're trying to keep a positive attitude, okay?
You're trying to. It's got to be tough right here.
But where it hits you is Mike and I are in our sharp A's.
Yeah.
They make you stand up, and they read the charges, and they ask you how you plea. So here I am in my sharp A police uniform with 10 years on, and I'm going not guilty. And they put a trial on us, and we caught the investigators from Internal Affairs, including a captain and a lieutenant, lying about us.
Wow,
when that gets brought up on during this trial against Mike and I as defendants, we catch them in lies. Our attorney and rep catches them testifying against us, that catches them in lies. When they do, the captain at the time, who is now our chief of police, Michael Moore, screams at the stenographer to stop typing. Off the record.
Why were they lying about? Why were they against you? You're their boys, man.
Doesn't matter.
What was their motivation to do that?
Promotion. You see,
okay.
These are people that didn't have the courage to stay in the field and keep working.
Yeah.
So these are the ones that make sergeant with the minimum amount of time, which is 4 years, and run for cover and work what we call POG duty, administrative jobs. They don't work the field anymore, right? Yells at the stenographer to stop typing. The two captains and the civilian board member, who was the city attorney for a neighboring city, which is the greatest thing, having a civilian, especially an attorney, on that board. Because during questioning, the attorney he stopped one of the investigators testifying and goes, "Wait a minute, Sergeant. I've been listening to you for about a half hour, and you've been telling me that Officer Reckleff, Officer Henderson have been forthcoming, trustworthy, honest in their answers. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir." So this attorney on the board goes, "Then why am I looking at charge number 1 that says Reckleff and Henderson provided false and misleading statements to you?" And he goes, "That's easy. I went into, I'm not going to say their names, but Lieutenant so-and-so's name and Captain so-and-so's office to adjudicate this matter, to tell them it didn't happen. And they said, so what, charge him anyway." That's when the Captain Michael Moore, who's now the chief of police, yelled at the stenographer to stop typing. And my attorney leaned into my ear and said, "Hey, this is for your lawsuit." Because he knew we got him. We got the department line.
Yeah.
They were just throwing us to the wolves so they advance their careers.
Yep.
So you want to talk about bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
They do a sidebar back in chambers. They come back on. You'll like this. We go back on the record. They say, "Hey, charge number 1, lying, is over. We're not going to discuss it. If you," meaning me, Mike, and our attorney, "bring it up again, we will be charged with insubordination to a board." So we were supposed to just let it go. Like, nothing's going to happen to them. They got caught lying against us. Yeah. But we can't talk about it anymore, or you're going to charge us with insubordination.
They're essentially threatening you.
That's exactly what they're doing. So we beat our boards. We're good. We go back to our division, meet with our captain. Ultimately, a few months later, we're allowed to go back, work the field again. And Mike has such a bad taste in his mouth. So I go, "Mike, we got to sue these guys." Never sued anyone in my life. I said, "Well, we got to stand up for ourselves."
Yeah.
He goes, "Brother, I can't do this, man. I don't want to sue because I don't want to." It was like a 2-year process. Oh, so at this time, I'm benched. I have no public contact. Suddenly, there's SWAT tryouts again, and I'm not eligible to take them. So I missed my second time taking SWAT tryouts. And he goes, "I don't want to go through this again. This is too stressful. If we sue, yeah, we may win. We will win. but we have to tell this whole story all over. I goes, I don't want to do it. I didn't know how he was feeling inside. So I just said, I thought about it to myself, well, if I sue on my own, it's still going to drag him into it.
Yeah, yeah.
So we didn't. He ends up having a stroke. That's how hard it hit him.
Gosh, dog, man.
So he was off for a year, rehabbed himself, taught himself back to shoot, made sergeant, and had a great second half of his career as a patrol sergeant and became a mentor.
But the stress was enough to compromise his physical health. Yeah,
you got it.
I totally get that, man. I had a similar, obviously not the exact scenario, but similar situations in the SEAL teams, and you see that all the time, man. You see, it's an absolute shame. I guess you could find another word for it, but I'm gonna use the word shame that. You know, you even see leaders within the SEAL team that are willing to throw their boys under the bus.
Bless you.
That will make rank because of their willingness to do that, right? They'll make rank, and then they actually end up in these leadership positions for throwing guys under the bus in order to make themselves look better. It happens, man. It happens over all spectrums of organizations and all levels. It is astounding that it does happen. It's astounding that people get away from it. And I guess it's most astounding that you didn't just decide to walk away from that career at that point.
Yeah, well, at that point, I was raising kids, and I'm
thank God you didn't, man.
Right.
I mean, because look at the work you've been able to do between when that happened and now sitting where you are today, telling me, sharing your story with me and these thousands of people, man. So it's just a great testament of your endurance and your dedication to that line of work and that service, man.
Thanks. So what happened after that was they split Mike and I up, of course, because that's they still feel like there's a stigma like attached to you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, these are the two partners that. They don't look at it as you unjustly got accused of things. They just look at it, hey, these guys went through a Board of Rights together, so we're not going to make them partners anymore. So they split us up, and now I've missed 2 SWAT tryouts. And I'm certainly not saying I would have ever made it into SWAT. Made it through the qualifications and the tryouts, but that was the goal. So the next tryouts that came up was for K-9. And I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to try out for Metro K-9. It's the most elite K-9 unit in the United States. And my mentor, Jay Moberly, was the original K-9-1.
Yeah.
So I try out, and I know I'm in the running. And ultimately, I don't get selected. My buddy did, Dennis, phenomenal, and he deserved to get it. There's only one spot, right? He gets it. He goes there. One day he calls me. He's there a couple months. He's retired now. He calls me up and he goes, hey, brother Chris, he goes, I got to tell you something, man. I was working last night and I saw on the lieutenant's desk the names that were sent up from the tryouts for K-9, and you were number 1. You were number 1 in the shotgun obstacle course. You were number 1 in the sit sims. You were number 1 selection. They sent it up. And Bureau said no, and it was the stigma that was still attached because LAPD has this unwritten rule: if you're in some kind of trouble or associated with trouble, they pretty much shelve you for 5 years from promotions, And I'm like, all right, roger that. I said, I appreciate it, Dennis. You deserve to go there anyway, more to me. And in the end, I'm glad he went and I didn't, because I would have stayed there the rest of my career and I would have missed out. But what I realized at that moment, that was a career changing moment. I'm like, yeah. I'm done in this division. I'm done. I'm never going to get SWAT. I'm never going to get K-9. If I do, it's going to be 8, 9, 10 years from now. I said, I want to go be a mentor. So I took the next sergeant's test, and I made sergeant. And I also, at that same time, there was a detective's exam. I happened to pass that. So I did my sergeant status. And then from there, detectives came up. I went and was a table detective, what they call for your probationary period. So you do your 12 months detective, work in burglary. They send me over to robbery and homicide, working those, having an absolute blast. Because working detectives was when you start meeting victims,
Mm.
and you really start building a bond. And you're I'm working so hard that I'm picking up witnesses to take them to court in my detective car, just to help them out, because you're talking about some poor communities where they can't afford to get to court. You got witnesses and stuff.
So it has to become more personal at that point,
100%.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing detectives, and my year's coming up, and my goal was to go back to sergeant because I wanted to go back to uniform. I had been in Metro Division for 8 years, proudly wearing that uniform. I'm a uniform guy. And right when my 12 months was coming up to be, okay, you're a detective as well. We call it dual status, meaning you're a sergeant and a detective. An old Metro partner of mine had left, and he was now a detective supervisor working a unit called Fugitive Warrant Section. He happened to come through the detective division that I was working at the time. I was working robbery. And he goes, "Hey, Chris, what's up?" And I go, "Nothing, man. I'm just getting ready. I'm going to revert back to sergeant in a month or two. My detective stint is up." And he goes, "Got an opening in Fugitives. You want to come to Fugitives?" And I'm like, what do y'all do? He's like, "Oh, we work warrants. So when you're a suspect, you identify a suspect, you can't find him, arrest him, you issue a warrant, right?" "Yeah." "Well, we're the unit that goes out and finds that burglary or that robbery." "Oh, Roger, that sounds pretty cool."
So direct action unit, basically.
Right. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And my goal was I'll do it for two or 3 years at most, and then I'll revert back because I wanted to be back in the field as a sergeant. And I get there, great group of people. It's like there's 4 bureaus in L.A. that they call. They call Valley Bureau, which is the north end of Los Angeles, West Bureau, which is the west side, the beach communities, Mid-Wilshire area. East L.A. is, and Central area, where downtown is Central Bureau, and then South Bureau is South Central Los Angeles. So there's 4 different platoons, if you will, in Fugitive Warrant Section. And basically you log on, there's a Fugitive website, and the warrants will pop up, new fresh warrants. This guy's wanted for burglary, this one's wanted for domestic violence. And that's pretty much what we were doing. We were going, pull up the suspect info, do a computer workup, try to find him or her, the suspect, and arrest them on the warrant. I got my fill of that for about 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, okay, I got to go back. I got to go back to patrol. It became mundane. The thrill really wasn't there, and not to diminish a burglary warrant or, a domestic violence. It just, the excitement was not there for me.
Yeah.
So I was getting ready to go back to patrol, and, my partner, he said I can give him his name, George Morales. He hits me up one day, and I knew he's working this Wazoo unit. It's called the FBI Fugitive Task Force. And he hits me up. He goes, "Hey, bro, we got an opening, man. A guy here is dying to get out. It's too high. It's too high maintenance. It's too high stress.
Yeah.
It's too much running and gunning." He goes, we know your reputation from working fugitives. Would you like to come to this unit?" And this unit is made up of 9 LAPD detectives and 3 FBI agents. And the FBI agents aren't your white-collar ones you see on TV.
Yeah.
They're from their HRT SWAT team.
Yep.
Hardcore,
That's HRT is a highly specialized unit. HRT would actually integrate with SEAL platoons in some cases overseas.
Right.
Yeah.
And they sent, so I accept, I get accepted. I pass the background because you got to get credentials from the feds. You get what's called deputized. So now you can travel the country with powers of arrest.
Yeah.
And they sent us all to Quantico, Virginia to go through a mini HRT SWAT school.
That's a sweet facility, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Except it was the July and August.
Oh, yeah.
And
Nice little humidity.
A little humidity on the shooting ranges and tack vests and helmets doing burpees. Yeah, that'll dehydrate you quickly. But got blessed to go there, and that forever changed my career.
So this dude's the family's trying to evict this 68-year-old dude. The officers go there. They handle the situation, tell him he has to leave, and then they're there for about 45 minutes. They roll out.
Yeah, they wait till he packs up his car, all his belongings, and they make sure he's gone.
Yeah.
Officers stick around for a little while longer. Again, they did a phenomenal job, the responding patrol officers, to the radio call. They ultimately leave. About an hour later, this suspect comes back and lies in wait. And as his two relatives come out, two adult males, he takes 2 headshots with a 4-inch revolver from 30 yards and drops both of them. Kills one, critically wounds the other. This is family he's doing this to.
Gosh,
and this is a guy that's never been arrested, and you're 68 years old. So he then flees in his car. So ultimately, the homicide detectives get there. They process the scene. They identify who the suspect is, and they call us because they know they always use us to go find these murder suspects. So Jason Lycum is one of our operators. He takes the lead on the case, and for about a week, he's working up the case, okay, doing all the assets that the FBI brings and our department resources that we have to help locate people. About a week later, we're scheduled to do 2 murder search warrants in the Valley, North Los Angeles. So we started at 5 that morning, and this is August 7th, 2018, and I'm at my desk, and I'm reviewing. So when we do a search warrant, we have what's called a tactical operations plan, and when we do a surveillance operation, it's called an operations plan. So I'm reviewing 2 tactical search warrant operation plans for 2 locations we're going to be hitting for murder suspects in the Valley. So that's where I call this mindset, because I ultimately, in the end, the department had me teach this class called mindset on this debrief incident, whereas everybody's head was at. So my mindset at now 6 o'clock in the morning is reviewing these before I send them up to chain of command to get blessing for us to go hit these search warrants later that afternoon. And I send the 2 guys out there to do their recon on the 2 pads we're going to hit. 2 guys from the team. Meanwhile, Jason Lycum comes over to me. He goes, "Hey, boss, I got some intel that, that 68-year-old murder suspect that killed one of his family members, gravely wounded the other with the 2 headshots, maybe in this area in South Central. You mind if I take 2 of the guys and just scout?" I said, roger that. I said, just make sure if you come across anything good, don't set up on it because there's only 3 of you. That violates our protocol and our procedures. Just make notifications to the division watch commander that you're in that area, because we're all undercover in undercover cars. And if you happen to see him, don't take action. If he gets in a car, do a following, put it out over the divisional broadcast that you're following a murder suspect, etc. Let patrol get behind.
Okay.
So he goes, "Roger that, boss. I promise I'm not going to do anything. We're just going to head out there, kind of search the area, see if we can get lucky." Because we knew the suspect had a car. So I'm in the office reviewing these plans for later search warrant operations. So that's where my head's at.
Yeah.
And my phone rings about an hour later, and it's Jason. He goes, "Hey, boss, you're not going to believe this." I'm like, "You found the car?" He's like, "Yeah, man. It's at this hotel at 41st and Central Avenue in South Central." I said, "All right, where is it parked?" It's parked inside a small parking lot, a small hotel, small little 2-story rundown hotel. Roger that. I said, "Don't set up on a car. Keep a long eye on it. I'll start sending guys your way." So prior to kicking them off, we always brief. We brief, even though everyone knows the case, we rebrief. It's a new day.
Yeah.
So as a unit in the office, before those 3 went out, we briefed again. Then those 3 kicked off. I said, just keep a long eye on the car, make notifications to communications, let them know you're in the area, make sure the divisional watch commander from the patrol division knows, etc. He starts making, I said, start scratching the operation plan out.
Opord.
So
Yeah.
he's doing all that. I caused a pause on what I was focused on, which was approving these tech plans for the search warrants. I walk over to my lieutenant. Now, here's where the mindsets of everybody starts coming in. I brief with all the guys, the remaining guys in the office. We rebrief on the case. Even though we had just briefed before Jason and the 2 leave, we brief again, and I kick them. They know their assignments when they get there. Start picking up the wins, but nobody's take action yet. I walk over to my lieutenant's desk. It's my lieutenant's last day. He's an officer in the Army Reserve, and he had just gotten overseas orders. Where do you think his head was? Where do you think his mindset? His mindset wasn't.
Oh, no, he's thinking about deployment, man.
You got it.
Yeah.
I walk over to him, and I go, hey, boss, couple things. Got this 68-year-old man, murder suspect, never been arrested, and you need to know something. And we got to keep this on the down low. He's the father of an LAPD officer. And I could tell my lieutenant's a phenomenal guy. He's since retired. After he did that year deployment, he came back and then he retired. I could tell what I was telling him was just in one ear, out the other ear. And of all the years I'd been running the unit, I had never gotten like this weird feeling. Like there was something about this case that was bothering me. I think it was coupled with this 68-year-old, never been arrested, and the fact, obviously, he took 2 headshots lying in wait at family members, and to top it off, he's the father of an LAPD officer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at my lieutenant, and he's clearing out his desk. And I'm like, man, he didn't hear a word I said.
And are you counting on him to go out on this op with you?
He never went out on our ops. I would run the unit, and, you know, that's just the way it was.
Gotcha.
I had already logged off my computer. I walked back over to my desk. This is the only time I've ever done this for any case. True story. I power my computer back up. I wait till it boots up. I go into Word, and I type up a 1-page synopsis. I've never done this before. I type up what we call a DR number. It's just a case number. Suspect's info, name, age, no rap sheet. The fact that he's a father of an LAPD officer, who that is, with that officer's serial number, where that officer works, the circumstances of the case, the murder warrant number, all the things that I knew if this went sideways, the 10th floor is 10-story building, 10th floor is the chief's office, would be wanting, it would quench their thirst.
That's right.
If something bad happened. And I'd never done that before. Of all the hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of cases. I walked back over to my lieutenant, I said, hey, boss, here's this flyer I typed up with all the bullet points that will quench the thirst of the 10th floor if something goes sideways. I got a bad feeling. I've never had that feeling before. Done so many murder cases and high-profile murder cases. Never had a bad feeling. Something, I can't explain it.
Did that get his attention?
It did. He's like, roger that, thanks. But you'll find out later that it didn't.
Yeah.
So I go out there, I meet with the guys, and now we use Nextels. We have a FBI surveillance frequency we use. We have the division we're on, which is Newton Division, LAPD, patrol area. So I got that base frequency on, and we get a group text thread. I meet with Jason, and Jason hands me the op plan. And I look at it, and he's got an order of everybody. You know, I'm team leader. It's my op. He's got one of our operators. I'm not going to say his name because he's still operating. But he has him on point. And for the stick, for the takedown.
Yeah.
Not point like in the car for surveillance. That was somebody else. So he has the assignments for when we actually jump out and do a takedown. And he's got this guy, and that officer, or that detective rather, had gotten in a gun battle, the unit did, and he was a shooter, and dropped a murder suspect who had murdered his estranged wife, kidnapped his kid from San Mateo, California, came down here, and he was loading up into an Uber, and one of the operators dropped him. There's a whole nother story to that too, but I want to focus on this one story. So I saw him, and I'm like, I'm doing a disservice if I had this bad feeling that this was going to go sideways.
Yeah.
And I don't have a reason or any explanation why I had a bad feeling. I just did.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing there to necessarily prompt you that this was going to be any different than any other thing that you guys have done.
Right. And I'm like, man, yesterday, the final findings of his shooting from almost a year ago finally came back, all in policy, everything's good. And I'm like, I think this is going to go bad, and I don't want this same operator being the first one to make contact.
Yeah.
So I changed the lineup. and I said, Jason, you're on point. You're going to be with the Benelli semi-auto shotgun. So if people don't know that or familiar with that, a Benelli M4, it's a semi-auto shotgun, meaning you're not racking it.
Yep.
Right. So you just press the trigger, just like a pistol. Each time you press it, a shotgun blast is going to come out, and you got 5 in the tube. Said you're going to be on point, so I'm going to swap you.
What rounds would you have in that Benelli? Sorry, I have to ask.
He had, they were Federal and
Buckshot?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were buck. He did not load any slugs.
Okay.
We have slugs that you could, skip load, or if you have a bad feeling or it's going to be a longer shot.
Yeah.
We had a feeling it's going to be close contact, so you don't need a slug. So he had that loaded with his buck Magnum, and in 2 was another operator, position 2, with his M4 carbine rifle. Then position 3 was another operator with pistol, but we have check boxes we have to make, Chad. The department's big on less lethal options.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple of different less lethals. So I had him. He was a newer member of the team, but I put him in a critical role, which was the beanbag shotgun. Now, when you check that box, it's just to say we had it available. It was with us, right? And that's all it is. You shoulder it with your sling,
Yeah.
but you're going to be with your pistol. Position 4 was the original operator whose shooting just came back the day before. I moved him from position 1, put him in position 4, and his was a second less lethal option, which was the taser. But he knows he keeps that in his taser holster,
Yeah.
and he's got his 1911 out.
But you still, because of the bureaucracy, you've still significantly crippled your team in order to hit these wickets.
Right.
Yeah, because for you guys that don't understand, you take a pistol into a firefight, it's much less effective than a M4 carbine or a shotgun loaded with buckshot. So
Correct.
yeah,
And,
that's tough, man.
And then position 5 was Agent Scott Garriola, and he was going to handcuff if all went well.
Yeah.
And then I was 6 as team leader. And I was always trained from all the SWAT training days for an effective team leader, you should never have your gun out.
Yeah, you don't need to be on your gun.
You're the orchestrator.
Mm-hmm.
You're the conductor. If you, whether it's a building search or whatever operator, if you as a team leader has to pull out your gun, you've done something wrong. You're not trusting your team.
That's it, brother.
You should be just standing there looking around, and that's it.
Same way in the SEAL teams, man. When we would train land warfare,
Right.
your OIC would get 1 mag.
Right.
It'd have to last him all night.
But because our department wants to appease everybody, I think it was Charles Webb had once made that famous quote that, people want to sleep well at night and want police to do the dirty work. They just don't want to know how it's done.
Yeah.
Because there is no, I think his quote was, there is no easy way to arrest a violent suspect.
Yeah.
Right? So our department has made it so politically correct with all these check boxes that now our operation plan is, the more convoluted or detailed a plan has to be, the harder it is to follow out when the crap hits the fan.
Yeah, you lose your fine motor skills when that happens.
It's very hard to follow everybody's. You may know what you're supposed to do, but because these plans have become so crazy in detail, because they want to account for every possible scenario.
Yeah.
It used to be I was always taught by our Force Investigation Division commander, Chris, in your op plan, just always end it with tactics used to effect arrest will ultimately be decided by the suspect's actions. Our department took the suspect's actions out of it. They don't care. It's our actions and our actions only.
Yeah.
They've made these TAC plans and op plans so convoluted, it's ridiculous. And again, more detailed a plan is, the harder it is to carry out. To me, the more streamlined and simple a plan is, everybody's on point and laser focused.
Keep it simple. Keep it stupid simple, right? That's critical, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we do is everybody's finally set up. We send the plan up. We get it blessed by bureau. So we're out there, we're pushing around ideas. Behind the scenes, I'm making calls, the guy on point that's keeping an eye on the car parked in the inside the parking lot. We send our best UC operator, George Morales. Trust that man, hundreds of operations. Mm-hmm. Greatest UC undercover officer I've ever worked with. Normally, he'll go out on foot by himself. But for some reason, I had a bad feeling. And I said, hey, brother, he's driving an undercover car, obviously. I said, I don't want you driving in and out yourself and making contact. The goal was you're going to go in, scout it, and then make contact with the manager. Get a lay of the land, and then if you get a good vibe from the manager, ID yourself and see if just because the car's there doesn't mean the suspect's there, right? So I said, I don't want you going in with yourself. I want another operator. So I send another operator, park your car, go in, and the two of you drive into the lot. He goes into the office, calls me from the office, hey, one manager here, super cooperative, not too many tenants. I think only 4 or 5 of the 20 apartments or 20 hotel rooms were filled, vacancy. And there's only 2 cars here in the parking lot, one of which is the suspect. Suspect's window is strategically positioned where his front window overlooks the courtyard and the front office, and the back window overlooks the major street where we had an operator also on surveillance. It was like the suspect picked that room. So I said, George doesn't need to be told this. He knows. I said, get a schematic of the area, lay of land. You have it on Google Maps and aerial view, but draw me a schematic.
Yeah.
So he draws a schematic. He comes out. Him and the partner come out. They drive out, and we talk on the phone because everybody's just laying low in their cars. And calls me up, and he goes, hey, Chris. He goes, here's the deal. Every day at 11 o'clock, the suspect comes out of the room. He's been there for a week since the murder. He comes out to the office, and he pays cash for another night's stay. He goes, and we knew we couldn't go up to the landing and knock on a door, and the manager wasn't sure if he was inside or not. So I said, all right, roger that. We're going to hold surveillance. And I go, what's your thought? And he goes, I say we send me and the other operator back in my vehicle in the parking lot, and we'll have point. And we'll see him if he's still in the room. If he comes out at 11 o'clock, comes down the stairs, I'll broadcast it to you guys. And to make entry into this parking lot, I call it an alcove. It was like a little tunnel.
Yeah.
Where it's so narrow that only one car could get in, meaning if a car is inside the parking lot of the hotel and is coming out and you go in, one has to back up to let the other in and out. That's how narrow it is. And that'll come into play. He goes, I say, send us back in. We'll act like we're doing some construction, little ruse in our undercover capacity, and we'll keep eyes on him, and I'll broadcast when he comes out. And he goes, when he comes out and goes in to pay for, if he pays, if he goes right to his car and he's not going to stay another night, you guys can jam him as he's coming out, take him down. Roger that. If he goes in to pay, we'll see him in the office. And when he comes out, he's going to be walking in a northern direction back to the stairwell to go up. And you guys, what I think is the best plan is when he's in that office, you guys deploy from your vehicles in your tack gear, wrap the corner in that alcove, you'll be in the shadows, and you'll be up against the wall, and he won't see you. So the last thing I did, I said, George, are you sure he's not going to see us? He goes, bro, he can't see you. There's no windows in the office. Mm-hmm. There's just a door, but the door faces north. You're going to be around a corner. He's already going to be there when you guys stack up in formation. And the plan was, when he comes out, we were going to fan out. And you have Jason making contact with his Benelli.
Yeah.
You have the second operator with his M4 rifle. And you have third with pistol, with a beanbag shotgun as backup for less lethal. And the fourth operator with 1911 pistol with taser as backup if the suspect's non-compliant.
Yeah, you guys are going to get online, get your guns to bear.
And we're going to get him right from behind, tell him to get down, right? If he goes for anything, we got all kinds of options. We got all the check boxes checked. I said, George, are you sure he's not going to see us? Because I'm out here on the street, man, and I'm looking where the office is situated, And I'm looking at windows on the south side of the building facing the street. He goes, that's a back office of this office. When you walk in, there's a counter with bandit barrier. Then there's a wall with a door.
Mm-hmm.
He can't see those windows. He won't see you guys coming and rapping in the alcove. I said, roger that. Right on. So sure as heck, at 11 o'clock, everybody knows their assignments. Everybody's good. Everybody's mind is on the objective. Now, we've been on surveillance since about 8 o'clock in the morning now. Jason had found the car a little after 7, made notifications. They had our phone numbers, our unit numbers, everything, both the patrol division and the base frequency radio operator, right? Communications division. Yeah. So we're what's called code 5, which means we're on surveillance. When you actually get out of your car, you change from code 5 to what's called code 6, means you're out for investigation, like contact with suspect is imminent or potentially imminent. So sure as heck at 11 o'clock, I hear George. George is, back in with the other operator in their undercover car in the parking lot. He goes, hey, doors open. Suspect's coming out. 100% suspect. He's coming down the stairs, doesn't have a care in the world, isn't looking around. Because that's another thing we look for. Is suspect tanked up? Is their head on a swivel, etc. He comes up and he slowly walks across the parking lot in the south direction into the office door. And George is like, hey, man, I see him giving cash. He's obviously staying for the night. And the plan was, we told the clerk, the manager, she's the only one working there, when he pays the money and you do the transaction, you go back into your office and you hide. Just lay low. Don't come back out. We'll come and get you when he's in custody. So everything was good. We had her safety was paramount.
What's George doing in the office?
Well, no, he wasn't there at that time.
Okay.
He was playing a role of construction at that time.
So he's watching.
He's on the grounds, and he's wired up. So in one ear, I've got the surveillance frequency, or FBI radio. In my other ear, I have Newton Division frequency, because that's the closest patrol area we're working within. So I have 2 different ear frequency pieces going on, and I'm hearing him in my left ear saying, suspect's out, 100% him.
Mm-hmm.
Not looking around. He's not hanked up. He's walking. He's in the office. He's paying the bill. He looks like he's staying for another night. I see him pulling out cash. He's like, all right, guys, deploy. So command's given. I give the command, all right, team, let's go. Everybody individually gets out of their UC cars or undercover cars, fully tacked up. Just tack vest and the weaponry that they've been in, position for, their assignment for. As we go into the alcove to butt up against the wall in formation and hide in the shadows till he comes back out and walks right in front of us, and we're going to basically surprise the heck out of him. As we're rounding that corner, the radio, I change from code 5 to code 6. I mean, we're not on surveillance. We're out. We're out of our vehicles, and contact is imminent. So I put out, my call sign, 5 King 361, show me code 6, 187 suspect, and I name the name of the hotel and the address that we're at, even though we've been there for hours and they already know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just changing from code 5 to code 6.
Yeah.
As I'm saying that, I hear the radio operator go, can you give us the address again? And I'm thinking, we've been here for hours. You know the address. As I'm now, so I'm listening to 2 different things. I'm listening to her, the radio operator, and I give the address again. And as I'm saying that, and the team is forming up, I hear Jason, who's on point, first in line. I hear him go, window, 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 back up. And I'm thinking, window? There's not supposed to be any windows. George missed a window on his recon. There was a small little window. And that becomes huge. So not wanting to make any sound, Jason's like, back up, back up. We're whispering. I walk back to the sidewalk, and I'm talking into my radio, giving the address that they already had. As I walk back up to the team to get an idea where this window is, I hear the radio operator asking, I hear a patrol officer saying, hey, what'd they say the name of the hotel is? And then the radio operator comes back on and says, 5 King 361, can you say the name of the hotel again? I'm thinking, we've been here for hours. You know the name of it. You already have it.
Asking me this now.
Right. So I'm walking back. And as I walk back to the sidewalk, I whisper, say the name of the hotel again. And I'm hearing George in my ear. Okay, guys, be ready. And what I always had a practice of, or a habit of doing, is, sometimes your comms go out, right?
Oh, yeah, comms suck.
Yeah. So I'm wanting to make sure everybody knew what the picture George was painting to us. In case their comm went out, I want to go up and put my hand on everybody and say, hey, man, be ready. He's paying his bill. Just be ready. Well, as I go to do that, the newer detective to the unit, who's in position 3 with the beanbag shotgun, he drops his flashlight, and it echoes in the small little alcove that we're in. And Agent Garriola leans down, picks it up, puts it in his belt. All of a sudden, the radio communications officer, she comes back on and asks me for another pertinent information. And I'm rolling my eyes like, are you kidding me? And as I go to talk or whisper, that same detective racks a beanbag round into the shotgun. Mm. Everybody knows the universal sound of a racking shotgun. And it's not like I could say, hey, don't do that.
It's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah.
Roger that. The position 4 operator, who's got his 1911 out, and he's in taser if he has to go to it, leans forward and sarcastically goes, shh, like, dude, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
You're making a racket here. Unbeknownst to us, the suspect hears the noise. Or when you mirror up the time that racking happens, here's another thing George had found out for us in his recon. Even though it was a shoddy hotel, we were going to be filmed on high-definition 4K video, 30 frames per second surveillance. And we were fine with that because we do everything right.
Yeah.
So there's video on us when that happens, and there's video inside the office where the suspect is. He had already paid the bill, and she goes to the back and hides, right? He hears a sound. He hears something because the moment that happens, he turns and he looks, and it's eerie when I watch it. And he's looking at the wall, and we're on the other side of that wall, but we don't know he's looking at it. Mm-hmm. He walks to his window, and the first thing he does is he looks north towards where his hotel door is. And as he's coming back around, you see him do this, and he catches Jason. He catches a glimpse. Whether we'll never know whether he caught his shoulder, but he knew we were there and we were compromised. Mm-hmm. And we don't know we're compromised.
And you're stuck in an alcove.
Yes.
Yeah.
And George doesn't catch that. George doesn't see that happen because he's got limited view through one door, a glass door where, that leads into the office. George is doing his best to paint the picture. And he's like, all right, guys, suspect's coming out. I had just leaned up to everybody, put my hand on their shoulder, said, get ready. He's going to be coming out. Be ready. Be ready. As I say that, for like the 4th time, the radio communications officer comes on and she goes, 5 King 361, can I get your phone number? And I'm thinking, my phone number's been on file with you guys since we've been on surveillance. I stand there and I whisper. I click my mic and I go 818, which is my area code. As I'm doing that, George is going, suspect's coming out. Be ready. George doesn't see him. What he does is, as soon as he sees us in the window, the suspect pulls out his gun, opens the door. We think he's coming out and just going to walk back towards his door.
You think you still got the drop on him at this point. Yeah.
He comes out ablazing. So he's less than 6 feet from Jason. He's like 4 feet from Jason. And he fires the first round as Jason sees him and is coming up with his Benelli. And the first round hits him dead in his surefire light and explodes his light. To me, that's Jason getting shot.
Yeah.
Second round hits our second guy who's coming up with his rifle and hits him in the arm. drops his arm, his finger hits the trigger as he's trying to shoot, and he sprays a couple of rounds. But a lot of them went low because that round fractures his wrist. The bullet splits in 4. 2 come out the top of the forearm, 2 come out the other end, the bottom of the inside of the forearm. Suspect gets a 3rd round off, goes past our heads, hits the other side of the alcove behind us.
4 feet. 4 to 6 feet.
4 to 6 feet.
Wow.
Boom, boom, boom. He's blasting. First 2 hits the first 2 guys. Jason did the most heroic thing out of my entire career I've ever seen. He shoots, and we know this because of the high-definition camera we're being filmed 30 frames per second. He shoots 5 shotgun rounds in 1 second. On the move, he starts pieing to his left to draw the suspect away from us because the suspect's shooting at the team. So he selfishly puts himself out in the open, in harm's way, to do a one-on-one with the suspect.
Selflessly, yeah.
He saved all our lives that day.
Yeah.
100%. He shoots 5 rounds, and we're taught, and when you go in the heat of battle, you resort to training. When you run dry on a shoulder weapon, you drop it, it's slung, and you transition your pistol. He transitions to his 1911 and does 2 controlled shots. As this is going down, the second guy with the rifle who got blasted in the wrist, he turns to me, and he's looking at me with a blank stare. And I go, bro, you got hit. It's obvious. Blood's all over his hand. Yeah. And I look down, and there's blood on his jeans. I go, bro, you take one in the leg too? And he's not responding. So I pull him out of the gunfight. And the third guy, he's making up for a mistake of racking it. He got his mindset right back on it, and he does what he's trained to do. If the guy in front of you goes down, you step over, around, and you start laying down fire. So imagine an alcove, unless you were there, you know how loud gunfire is.
Yeah.
It's magnified in a little alcove. There's smoke everywhere. Ears are blown out. You got rifle rounds going off. You got shotgun rounds. You got revolver rounds going off, all in seconds. Everybody's ears are blasted. I pull Mike away, the officer that got shot. I say, hey, bro, you got to sit down, man. Just sit down for me. He's not responding. He had already gone into a little bit of shock.
Yeah.
And I said, brother, just sit down. Stay here. The third position rounded the corner and laid down cover fire because he's rounding that corner blindly at this point. He just knows Jason's out there hung out to dry shooting. And he's got to get with his buddy, man, and protect him. And he does the right thing, man. Heroically rounds that corner, lays down fire. Takes care of business. I go to broadcast. I got to put out officers need help. I got an officer that's been hit. I go to key my mic. You don't think I got some adrenaline running through my body, right? But what good is it going to be if we've all heard people key mics and scream into that radio.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't work too well, does it?
No. So I key my mic, and I take a breath, and as calmly as I can say it, 5 King 361, shots fired, officer needs help. I've got an officer that's been hit. I need an RA unit ASAP. I find out later, because I put that over to patrol division frequency, that the guys on patrol, they know who we are. Our unit's got a reputation. They actually thought we were, so when I click my mic to give my phone number, when the shooting starts, you actually hear the first rounds going off before I, let go of the mic.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're in a gun battle. And I'm looking around, making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. I never once go for my gun because everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Well, patrol officers and detectives in the detective squad room, they actually thought we were on the range training and practicing because they heard gunfire, but they heard the way I was talking. They thought, look at those fools. They're on the range and they're running a drill.
Wow, man.
And they're on the wrong frequency. They're supposed to be on the training frequency, but here they are on the patrol base frequency. And then it dawned on them, oh, no, this is real. They're getting shot at.
Yeah.
So, now lights and sirens are coming, and suspects down. fourth operator comes around. I'm tending to the wounded operator. I put out the help call. Fire department's not going to come in a hot zone. And the communications officer comes on, hey, is a hot zone clear for RA unit, rescue ambulance unit, to come in? Before I can click on it, a patrol officer, again, they're just trying to help out. They're screaming lights and siren to get there.
Yeah.
One of them gets on and says, yeah, roger that. It's clear. They can come in. Not knowing, no, we still have a hotel room. We don't know if he's got a friend that's helping him hide out.
Mm-hmm.
We know he's got 3 guns registered to him. We know we were being shot at with 1, but we know there's at least 2 guns in there, and there might be somebody else. So it's not, the hot zone isn't clear. We got to get people up there and clear the room first. So I go over, I get on the radio. I says the hot zone is not clear. And they go, okay, well, the ambulance will be waiting, coming and staying on the main, street, which is Central Avenue. I walk over to the operator that got shot in the arm. I said, bro, man, can you stand up for me? And he goes, I'll try. So me and one of the operators basically assist him, and we walk him about a quarter of a block to one of our surveillance vans that were there, open up the side door, sit him in it, and that one operator stays with him till the ambulance gets there.
Have you guys applied tourniquet, anything, or is his bleeding slowed down enough to where you guys feel comfortable with where he's at? Or
I left that. I'm the team leader, so I got to get back to the team.
Yeah.
So I left that to that operator.
Did you guys have a medic on the team?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a medic, and that medic carries the full medic gear.
Yeah.
But he was the second shooter in that event, so he was out of play. But all of us carry tourniquets. We carry a dead center on our vests.
Yeah.
So either arm can grab it. Because most cases, you got to apply it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what, statistics show. So it's not a good, having it in your back is not a good spot.
Yeah.
So I get back to the scene. They're cuffing the suspect. We're securing, we see the murder weapon is there, the revolver. And I'm checking on everybody. You good, you good, you good. And I could see some of the shock on some of the guys' faces. Like, I can't believe this just happened, man. This guy got the draw on us, man.
Yeah.
And came out blasting. And again, I had a weird feeling about this before I even left the office. Again, that was the first time I ever typed up that form. And it came in handy because you got officers shot, and the chief's office wants to know what's going on out there. Who was it? Who's hit? Etc. Ambulance comes, transports that officer. They immediately put him in surgery. He never got hit in the leg. We ripped off his pants. They're doing a triage, and that was blood that was from the wrist.
Yeah. That
was on there. But you know how it is. You got to pull off all the gear, all the clothes, and check for other bullet holes.
Bullets do weird things too.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Any of those fragments could have traveled through and pierced the heart. So I get back to the scene. We secure and clear the hotel room. And then, ultimately the hot zone is clear. And now we have what's called our Force Investigation Division that comes out and handles shootings. Everybody gets separated. And about 12 hours later, I'm in an interview room getting interviewed. And I have to set the stage because I was the officer in charge. I have to go start to finish what it was all about. We have this thing called a public safety statement that you're supposed to give out if a shooting, like, hey, you separate the shooters. As responding supervisors from the patrol division comes, you assign one to basically babysit and monitor because we're not allowed to talk, can't compare notes, any of that. But what you have to do is the team leader, you have to go, hey, did you shoot? Even though you're there and you see it, you have to confirm. Did you shoot? Yeah. Did you shoot? No. All right. I don't need to know. Normally there's 7 questions you got to ask, like how many rounds do you think you shot? What direction? And what that is it's called a public safety statement. That's if in case there's any flying rounds downrange down a neighborhood sidewalk, they want to be able to canvass and see if a bullet went through a window and killed somebody in their house.
Yeah, you
right?
got to account for every one of those. Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't have to ask all those questions because I was there. I didn't have to ask them, hey, what direction were you shooting? I was watching it. Or how many rounds. I was there. I heard all the rounds. So it was limited. But I still had to explain when the Force Investigation Division got there why I didn't ask all those questions. There's accountability.
Yeah.
And, I know how to explain all those. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. So ultimately, it's about 12 hours later. Everybody, one by one, gets interviewed. I have to set the stage, what the game plan was, and whatnot. And, one of the questions is, did you we heard you ask for an RA unit, a rescue ambulance unit for the down officer. Did you request one for the suspect? That's big for our department. I go, no, I did not. And they're like, why not? I go, because he was dead. They didn't like that, but that's just the way I speak.
Yeah.
Because I was furious that this guy, because we're going to get back into mindset, because I don't want to talk too much about a war story. I think this is the part for listeners right here. So I focus on this on mindset for a couple reasons. So one, this suspect in that office is the father of a LAPD officer. When we went up to the hotel room, on the nightstand was a picture of his son who graduated the police academy. When he saw the police were out there to apprehend him, he had options. He could have stayed in there and committed suicide. He could have stayed in that office and barricaded himself. He could have came out that door and ran the other way.
Yeah.
He could have came out that door and surrendered. He could have came out that door and just pointed the gun without shooting it and do what they call suicide by cop.
Yeah. Yeah.
He tried to assassinate LAPD officers, and he's the father of one of them. That's what his mindset was.
Yeah. Pure evil, man.
A 68-year-old man with no arrest record
Mm-hmm.
tried to murder LAPD officers. That's where his mindset was. So now the aftermath. So the FBI comes in because 3 of the operators were FBI agents. They fly, they're shooting teams from Washington, D.C. They fly in, and that following weekend, they are done. They go home. All good, legal shooting.
Good shoot.
Good shoot. Matter of fact, they take Jason and his family and the other operator that got hit, that was super brave to stand there and fire from his rifle after taking one in the wrist and shattering his wrist and making it useless. They fly those 2 guys and their families to Texas and present them with Medal of Valor. Okay? What does the Los Angeles Police Department do? 10 months later, they have 10 months to do this investigation, which is typical for shootings because they nitpick everything, start to finish. We go to the shooting review board. So now we're in our uniforms. We're on the 10th floor in the chief's office, and the force investigation puts on the presentation. And we knew we were on video. So now you have 5 deputy chiefs and commanders. I knew 2 of them very well. Okay? They were my academy classmates. I know their careers very well. They hadn't worked the field since 1993. They hadn't worked the field in over 20 years, 25 years, because they ran for cover for administrative jobs and just took promotional tests. The arrogance of these 2 individuals. Matter of fact, one of those guys, not only was he my academy classmate, we shared an apartment together for a year. I was in his freaking wedding party.
Yeah.
I was a member of his wedding party.
Mm.
They're so arrogant, the pure arrogance of people that will criticize and critique you, Monday morning quarterback, if you will, that haven't done the work, weren't there, weren't facing evil. They had the luxury of looking at 30. So the shooting takes place in less than 3 seconds, start to finish. When the suspect comes out and coup de grace us and starts blasting, to Jason's reaction, to his transition to his pistol, to the other operator coming around a corner and throwing rounds down at the suspect. They're watching this on 4K video, 30 frames per second. They have the person from Force Investigation stop at the frame when the 5th and final shotgun blast is pushing the suspect backwards and the murder weapon, the revolver, is flying out of his hand, right? That's Jason's 5th one. He drops his Benelli and transitions to his 1911 2 control pistol shots as the suspect's down.
Yeah.
there's a thing called tachypsyche, lag time, if you will, where when you're in a stressful shooting like that, your mind can't catch up to what's going on. So if you're in a shooting and a suspect's got the gun, you see him or her still with that weapon.
Yeah.
And that's why you're shooting. Well, video may show that they've already dropped it, or in this case, it went flying out of his hand. Your mind isn't at that point. Mm-hmm. It's still at the point you're getting shot at. Well, the arrogance of these deputy chiefs, their findings were Jason's, when he transitions to his 1911, those 2 rounds out of policy. And the guy that rounded the corner after I pulled the one guy out of the firefight and he laid down fire, all of his rounds from his 45, he had a Glock 45, out of policy. When yet he did what he was trained, the heroic thing, to get back in the fight with your partner who's left out to dry. They say all of your rounds are out of policy. So
it's mind-boggling.
Yes. So from there, there's 4 aspects to the way this kangaroo court works. You have the shooting review board, and that's what these findings were. And I wanted to strangle these 2 classmates of mine that think they're holier than thou as deputy chief positions. A bunch of cowards. We walk out of there, and now it goes, their findings goes to the chief of police. And the chief of police sees that several of the pistol rounds are out of policy. So he makes these deputy chiefs and commanders that form that opinion come in and explain. And the reason we know this is out of the 4 people, or 5 people that are there, 4 are commanders and deputy chiefs from the department. The 5th is a peer member that's on our side, representing us.
Yeah.
And saying, oh, man, they were in a gun battle. So the chief of police makes, one by one, all of them give their rationale. Oh, well, chief, the gun was already flying out of his hand. They didn't care about lag time. They didn't care about real-world gun violence.
Yeah.
The chief says, no, these guys were in a gun battle. I'm putting all rounds in policy, but I'm putting Chris's tactics and game plan out of policy. And I was all for that. I'm like, roger that, man. All I care about is the rounds are in policy. Put my tactics out of policy if you don't like the way my game plan was.
You're taking care of the boys as the OIC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, everybody was a part, would have done the same. I'm nothing special. If the roles were reversed and one of the other guys was OIC, they would have done the same.
Well, this is an example of high level leadership, right? How to earn the trust of your men, and to lead men is about taking care of the men, right? It's a huge part of it. So
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
and that is how my mind works. So the chief puts all the rounds back in policy, my tactical game plan out of policy. No big deal. Goes from there to the Inspector General's office. The Inspector General says, no, I'm going to put those pistol rounds out of policy. So now you got 3 different decisions by 3 different, quote-unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, entities. Goes to the 4th and final one, the most important one, which is the Police Commission. And the Police Commission is a board of civilians, 5 members, that make critical decisions for the way the department operates. And they did the right thing. They put all rounds in policy. And they put my tactics back out of policy. So me and 3 of the other guys get what's called a notice to correct from the chief's office. And I stopped reading after the first paragraph because there was so many mistakes. So whoever the aide writer, staff writer was for the chief of police should be fired because he or she was an idiot and didn't even know the case, because there were so many mistakes in that first paragraph. It's like, did you even read the findings? So I stopped reading, but in a nutshell, it just said, it was a warning to me saying, if I ever make a tactical mistake again, I'll be fired. Okay, roger that. And they did that. He did that. The chief did to 3 of the other operators, including Jason. Okay, so Jason gets shot, gets the Medal of Valor by the FBI,
and is deemed a good shoot.
Yes, but
Yeah.
our own department
Yeah.
says, hey, if you do something like that again, we're going to fire you. And then they top it off and they send us to training what's called LETAC, Law Enforcement Tactical Application Course. Basically what that is remediation.
Remediation, that's what I was about to say.
You got it. And we get there, and an old Metro partner of mine is a Sergeant 2 running that unit, that school, LETAC. And I walk in, and he's like, I can't believe it. You just cost me money. And I'm like, what? Because I had a bet with all the instructors. When I saw your name on the roster sheet here, I go, no way, Chris is coming here. Because, one, we all know it was a great shooting. We know it was a great game plan because I reached out. We have 2 SWAT lieutenants I'm very close with.
Yeah.
And we have done many operations with them, in concert with them. We use them at certain times for takedowns. And both of them said, Chris, you did it the right way. I won't even get into what the chief of police said we should have done it. We would have all got killed that day if we would have went by his method. You know,
his tactics, techniques, and procedures from behind the desk, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I thought no way in heck you're going to be here. It was a great shooting. This is basically, people look at it as an embarrassment, like you messed up. It's a form of punishment, right?
Yeah.
And this is where mindset comes in. And usually it's for like weaker-minded or younger cops, I should say, or they're not developed yet, and they maybe have had an accidental discharge, or they had a use of force maybe with the baton or the taser that was deemed out of policy, or excessive, and they get basically sent back for remediation. But like you said, it's like punishment. And he's like, Steve Ariano's like, I told all these instructors, no way Chris is going to be here. He's got a little over a year to go before he retired. I didn't have to show up. I did not have, just because they gave me training officers as part of punishment, I could have just called in sick that week. You know, it's a 5-day school. So I get there, I go, no, man, these 3 guys are here. I'm here. Mm-hmm. My brothers are here. I'm with them. So I'm looking around at that morning, day 1, that Monday, and I'm seeing all these younger class. There's about 15 of us there, 20 of us, max. Officers, I don't know any of these younger patrol officers that are there that they're getting punished for whatever they did, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them, and I could see their body language and their mindsets, and they're disgruntled. They have no desire to be there, or they're embarrassed or whatever.
Yeah.
I turn to my 3 guys. I go, hoo-yah, dudes. We're going to set the example here, man. We got, me 30 years, most of you guys 25, 24 years on the job.
Yeah.
We're going to show these youngsters how you handle getting remediation.
Wow, man.
You're going to send me to tactical training and shooting training for a week? Roger that.
We're going to have some fun with this.
So we fired up these youngsters, and we said, no, man, you got 4 broken down old detectives with a ton of experience. We're going to, any of us could have been disgruntled because everyone in the department knew about this shooting and this ambush. And they're like, we can't believe you guys got deemed tactics out of policy and you guys are getting punished for this. Like, nah, man, we're going to show here.
Let's get some value out of this.
You got it.
Yeah.
We're not going to waste a day. So by day 4, George Ryan, he's the Sergeant 2, which is the highest ranking sergeant position there. He was in SWAT for many years. Great guy. So he's the overall OIC of LETAC class at the academy. It's in-service training. He comes up to me, and we're doing building searches now, right? And, we're shooting simunitions. We had shot on the live range all morning. Now we're doing building clearance. And he comes up to me, he goes, Chris, come here. He goes, got a question for you. He goes, on tomorrow, the last day of training, the last block we have, it's called mindset. And normally we have someone come in and talk about getting your mind right. He goes, would you do me a favor and debrief? You mind talking about what you guys went through that day? I said, not only would I be glad to do it, I made a PowerPoint presentation, and I gave it because my old captain that was working Van Nuys division now at the time sent me an email, said, hey, Chris, heard about that shooting. Would you mind talking about it? Because a year had passed, so now you could talk about it. And we're having a supervisor's training day. Said, roger that. Unbeknownst to me, I get there. Not only is it the captain and the lieutenants from the patrol division and all the sergeants that work there, because it's a supervisor training day, the deputy chiefs found out about it, and commanders found out about it, so they showed up. I'm not going to say anything that isn't true.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. This happened 365 days ago, so I can talk about it now. Everything I say here is exactly what happened, including the 4 different findings between the Shooting Review Board, Chief's Office, Inspector Generals, and the Police Commission. And start to finish, I talked about the whole thing. And not one word came back to me from those deputy chiefs. They couldn't go to the chief's office and say, hey, he's giving PowerPoint presentations on this to the department. And
they didn't like it, though, did they?
They didn't have a choice. It's the truth. It's the straight up truth. Yeah. So George Ryan, the Sergeant 2 at LETAC, says, man, you have a PowerPoint for this? I go, George, there's nothing on it that's wrong. He goes, well, I need to review it first. I said, roger that, but I've given it to this deputy chief, this commander. They were all present. Nothing I'm going to talk about isn't what happened and the findings and the ridiculous decisions that came down on us on something that was heroic. And the FBI deemed it heroic. Yeah. But our own agency is penalizing us for us. So I give it to the class on that last block on that last day, which is that Friday. And it had a huge impact on all those young cops. So much so that the instructors came up to me and go, hey, man, you mind giving this every LETAC class? I know you're busy running these operations. Will you give us? Absolutely. I'll definitely give it, because I think it's got a lot of value. Yeah. I've since passed that since I just retired, a month and a half ago, to one of the other operators that was there that day. Okay. And they've continued giving that, and that's become part of the curriculum. But I don't want to take up too much time, but I talking about mindset, I skipped over a very important part. So 2 important parts. So I've had the unfortunate, about being part of a team and being a leader, you have to make decisions, and sometimes that decision is booting people out of the unit. Yeah, I've had to do that, and some of those guys were my friends, and it's not a fun feeling, but you have to separate personal and professional. This is about going home safely.
In that environment especially, yeah.
So a couple things. One, that shooting happened on a Tuesday. 3 days prior, one of the operators had just bought a home. He's married, 4 children, and he had a housewarming party. So 3 days prior to this incident, everybody was there because that's how close we are. So all the 9 LAPD guys and wives, girlfriends, kids, whatever, and the 3 FBI agents were there. Everybody's there, having a great time, barbecue in the backyard, all that. Not knowing 3 days later we were going to get ambushed and 2 guys were going to get shot. I ran that operation that day, and all I could think about was I would have had to gone to Jason's wife, Susie, and the other operator's beautiful wife. I don't want to say names.
Yeah, totally.
But Jason gave me permission on his end, and I would have had to beg for forgiveness that I got their husband shot. So a lot of things were dwelling on my mind because I put Jason in a position that he had originally had the operator that we're having this housewarming party at. Yeah. They're a different height stature. And all I can think of, if I hadn't done that, that bullet wouldn't have hit a surefire light. Yeah. Probably would have hit that operator in the throat or the face and killed him. So that was on, that hit me, that reality. Yeah. The order, how I changed it. I talked to Jason about that. And he's like, there is nobody that convinced either one of us that God had angels over us that day. There is absolutely nobody that convinced either one of us that we didn't have a protector watching over us. The way things unfolded, again, Jason could have got killed that day, first round. The second operator that got hit in the wrist, that could have hit him somewhere else, pierced his heart.
Yeah, man.
Dropped him.
4 to 6 feet. I mean,
and now the third round maybe wouldn't have whizzed by our head, and any different order of placement of operators, it could have been a completely more dramatic outcome and devastating outcome with casualties on our end. Yeah. So I give the guys a couple days break. Immediately you get in a shooting, they put the team off. You go to the psych doctor. I'm like, hey, I'm good, man. Roger that. I was in charge that day. I was responsible for getting 2 guys shot, but I'm good. Get the clear to go back to work. But they wait a week or so before they let us resume normal operations. Well, that following weekend comes, and now I'm like, I'm checking on the guys, but we're all assigned to home, right? And they're getting ready to bring us back. And I reach out to Jason, and Mike's. We all went and visited the guy that got shot in the wrist. Went to his house. Visited him a couple times. He's all casted up from the multiple surgeries he's had to get. He's back full duty as an operator, worked through it. But, there was a question whether or not he was going to have full use of the hand.
Yeah.
Because he had a rifle with the vertical forestock.
Yeah.
So the round hit him and just shattered the wrist and came out. Now, if he didn't have a vertical forestock and had it like this, it may have went right under and hit him. It's just the way things lined up.
Yep.
By the grace of God, those guys, the first 2 shots didn't kill those guys. So I wait, and I reach out to, I'm talking to George Morales. And again, he was our scout, and he missed the window.
Yep.
I'm good. Roger that. I call up Jason. I say, hey, I want to take you and Susie out to brunch. They live at a little beach community in L.A. I go, you want to meet, you guys good now? Because I wanted them to have the family time first.
Yeah.
Because this was traumatic to everybody. He goes, Roger that. Sunday morning's great. Brunch. Let's go down, have a beer or 2, and hang out on the beach, on this restaurant that has a patio overlooking the sand and stuff. I'm driving down the 405. So it happened on a Tuesday. This is Sunday. So what are we looking at? 5 days or so later, right?
Still pretty fresh.
Still fresh.
Yeah.
But I'm now, this is the first time I'm going to see Jason, one of the guys. But I've been in phone text conversation with everybody. I'm driving down the 405 down towards where I'm going to meet Jason and his lovely wife, Susie. And my phone goes off, and it's George Morales. I go, what's up, brother? He goes, hey, man, I'm not doing good. I haven't slept all week. What's up, bro? He goes, I missed the window, man. I got you guys shot. I go, no, man. We readjusted. There's a multitude of issues that happened that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you missed a window, but we're humans doing a human operation. When humans are involved, there's going to be mistakes made at some point. Think about all the times we did it right. All the times you were spot on with your schematics and your recon. He goes, dude, I never saw the window. I can't sleep. This guy ambushed you guys, and it's my fault. I go, no, man. That's like saying it's the guy that was third in line that racked the beanbag ground and made noise, and that same guy dropped the flashlight and made noise. No, man. We readjusted on that window. The third guy that racked around came through when I pulled the wounded officer out of the way. He stepped up, got his mind right. I go, things happen, we readjust. That's life. He goes, I can't sleep. I go, I'll tell you what, man. I'm on my way to meet Jason and Susie. You want to meet us at the beach? He goes, man, you mind if I meet with you guys? You got it. So this is guys that are telling the psych doctor, hey, man, I'm good.
Well, yeah.
You are when they immediately tell you because you're still breathing.
Yeah.
But as the days go by, man, you start dwelling and some PTSD starts creeping in.
Not to mention the doctor doesn't have your trust. It's
Right.
not part of your team. And not to mention, because of some societal parameters, you talk to that doc and you're potentially putting the rest of your career in jeopardy, man.
Absolutely.
It's just, it's just a fact, man.
Yeah.
I get it, man.
I'm going to tell this strange doctor, she's asking me questions. She's like, you're awful calm. I go, hey, man, this isn't the first rodeo, man. So I'm good, man. We're good. I said, I was responsible for getting 2 operators shot, and I'll handle it. And that goes to, so George ends up meeting us, and we hang out for a couple hours, have a good brunch, and that helped with, we talked, and Jason's like, hey, man, you didn't get a shot at. You missed the window, but when I came around the corner, I stopped and said, back up, window. He's whispering it. We readjusted. Things happen. The suspect happened to go to that window, check on his room, come back, look, and he caught a glimpse. We'll never know because he's dead, but he caught a glimpse. Whether it was
a shadow of Jason standing there, caught a glimpse of his arm or saw the barrel, we'll never know. But we got made. We didn't know it. That's life. So getting back to how I was running a unit and I had to unfortunately remove some people that just made some critical errors before on other cases, and it was a detriment to the team. And it's always a group decision, you know. It's not like someone that's in charge is the king. You know, you reach out and you talk to the other operators, and they're coming to you going, hey, man, this guy's he's not up to the standard.
100%, yeah.
And, you know, you got to take teammates' considerations and the morale, and you get rid of them. And, you know, I always tell them, hey, you know, I'll go have a cup of coffee with you, lunch with you, dinner with you anytime. You know, you come in with a handshake, you leave with a handshake. 2 of those 3 guys never talk to me again. Hey, man, that's on you. I feel bad that you're going to hold it against me and not look in the mirror and say, no, it was you. The other guy knew exactly why he was getting removed, and I have way more respect for that. So when you're a leader, it's not a one-way street. So I waited till all the hoopla was over. Not the 9 months later, 10 months later with the shooting review. I meant it like a week or 2 when they bring us back.
Yeah.
And immediately the captain wants to be there and do all these big debriefs and stuff. And you got all these people in these conference rooms that weren't there. That's not a true in-house debrief. So I waited a few days after all the people that weren't there but want to act like they were there or know better. Those debriefs were over. I called the unit into a debrief, the 12 of us. I said, hey, guys, you know the way I operate. I've gotten rid of people, and it works the same. I said, and I directed it to the 2 that got Jason and the other operator that I was responsible for getting shot. I go, hey, fellas, I got you 2 guys shot. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I was the OIC that day. We got blasted at with my game plan. I put people in positions that may have compromised us. Again, we'll never know because the suspect's dead, so we can't debrief him.
Yeah.
I said, you tell me now, you know, would you change the way we did things that day? You let me know, and I'll walk out this door. I'll give you guys a handshake. Someone else takes the reins.
Yeah.
But the fact is, in the history of this unit, no one ever got shot. Plenty of shootings, but none of us ever got shot.
Yeah.
I was the one that got my game plan ultimately caused 2 people to get shot. There's always someone that's responsible for everybody.
Yep.
Right? So both Jason and the other operator said, no, boss. Even knowing what we know now, getting shot and the multiple surgeries for the other, he said, we wouldn't have done it any differently. We would have done it the same exact way, even knowing the outcome. I said, all right, roger that, because if you're not comfortable with me leading the show or still being a part of this high-speed unit, you let me know and I walk out the door. No hard feelings. And I'll just go back to one of the regular fugitive squad, or I'll leave the division and just go be a table detective somewhere, you know, working domestic violence cases, whatever. Yeah. If you don't feel I'm up to being in this unit, if I don't live up to that standard. And they're like, no, we're good. We're good. So if either one of them or anybody that day had a problem, I was out.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I believe a leader should work. It's not a one-way street. You know, if I bring someone brand new in, and it doesn't have to be this unit, it can be any unit, and it could be any job. Anybody in a unit, whether it's a corporate office, whatever, should have input. Doesn't mean that input or their recommendations goes into the final outcome product. But I think you're foolish as a leader to not take into account, regardless of experience, listen to what everybody has to say.
Agreed, 100%.
And unfortunately, there's leaders, like I know on in this case, that hadn't worked the field in 25 years, but they're going to preside over this like they know what a gun battle is. And they have no clue.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important learning curve for anyone listening, that don't discount someone, you know, new. I talked to you on that run today about how impressed I was with Noah.
Yeah.
For such a young man to have such wisdom, that's impressive. But again, it doesn't have to be 3 of 7 project, doesn't have to be some corporation somewhere, Microsoft, doesn't have to be a police department. If you have someone younger on a team, doesn't mean they can't contribute.
That's right.
Listen to what they say, and they may end up having a great idea because they're looking at it from a completely fresh perspective.
That new perspective, man. You're exactly right. I mean, this has helped shape tactics all throughout the SEAL teams, man. It's input from guys that come in that, again, they see these tactics, these old tactics, through a fresh set of eyes, and that's the way we operate. Same way, Chris. I mean, there's so many things that I think are composed in this single story, and of course, they're all in complete alignment to what we teach our students. I mean, this is found. And here's the thing: you're not a leader if you're leading by force, right? You're a leader because you've instilled confidence in your teammates, and then they have decided to follow you, right? That's what makes you a leader. And if you don't take ownership, which this is the thing, this ownership thing is preached. It's a big topic now, this ownership, and it's a very important thing. But I think the caveat is it's much easier said than done. Yeah. It's much easier talked about. But when you, Chris, are standing in front of your team saying, look, guys, it's you let me know what you think. Do you still have confidence in my ability as your OIC? And if not, no hard feelings. I will step away, right? That is it, man. But that's hard to do, but it is essential.
I completely agree. It's essential. And to me, there's 2 types of leaders. To me, a good leader is one that surrounds he or herself with top quality leaders.
Yeah.
You know the other type of leadership, where the leader brings in weaker people because they have an ego and they want to make sure that no one is as good as them.
They want to shine, yeah.
Yeah, they want to shine, and it should be the complete opposite. You should surround yourself with leaders that are better than you.
Yep.
That makes your job that much easier.
That's it, brother. And then, you tell the story of, you coming up on comms after this scenario goes down, and this is similar to, I've seen this scenario play out in the SEAL platoons of a leader coming over comms, just like you did that day, Chris, and nice, calm, clear, concise. You know what you're going to say. You know what needs to be said. You do it, and it saves the life, potentially, of your teammates that day. This is so important, such an important principle, to be able to control your emotions, right? Your emotions being the way you speak, the way you're breathing, not yelling, not being angry or freaked out when you're in that position, regardless of the circumstance.
Right.
That's the embodiment of that, man. And, the other thing, you talk about, man, what happened afterwards and how, after it's been deemed a good shoot, these guys literally get the Medal of Valor for their actions that day, and then you still have to go and endure this harassment from your department, right? And this quote has been stuck in my head for the last 2 weeks, but you were and are the shining example of what this quote is talking about. You were that day, and on many days, the man in the arena, right? That's what you were, right? And the quote is, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause. You were doing that, Chris. Who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls behind the desk who neither know victory or defeat. I added a few words into that quote right there. I'm sorry, but your story, and specifically that part, reminds me of the man in the arena, which you were that day and on many other occasions. And just know that if you're in the arena, you're going to have critics, and you're going to have to stand in front of them at times and take that type of harassment. That's part of being the man in the arena, right?
Yeah, no, amen to that. And I know that mantra or that quote very well. We all do.
Yeah.
That's a creed we've lived by, not only in the unit, but throughout the police department. Many of the high operators know that.
Amazing.
And speaking of critics, so one of the persons on that board, that shooting review board, was a commander rank. And generally it's deputy chiefs on there. But there was a vacant deputy chief position because someone had just retired. So basically that commander was on there thinking, oh yeah, if I hammer these guys, I'll look good and I'm going to get the next deputy chief spot. And what happened? That person got the next promotion to deputy chief.
Yeah, man. It's like, it's to me, it's such an atrocity. It makes me wonder, 10, 20 years from now, or even maybe sooner, how are we going to find men or women to do this job? How? Because, there's only so much you can take. You talked about your teammate earlier. Actually, it physically, it literally had a stroke.
Yes. Because
of the physical stress that they were putting on him. Undue stress, mental stress that manifested itself physically. It's like, this is why I said any man or woman who raises their hand to serve in that capacity has my respect, because we don't see all that, man. And these stories need to be told, because now, I hope you guys listening, when you shake the hand of, when you see an officer in your own community, I hope after hearing this and hearing what men and women like Chris have not only done, but what they have been through unjustly, the things that they have to compensate for, the burden that they have to carry, I hope you will look at them in a new light. That's why these stories need to be told, man. I think it's key, brother. And there's a whole nother podcast in you. We haven't even talked about the mountain that you went, and tried to summit and came back. We haven't talked about the things that you have had to overcome, the things that you have had to manage and deal with in your personal life alongside your professional life. And you got to come back for another show at some point, man.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. My failure at attempting my first 14,000 foot mountain peak, and the mindset that went into that, and I immediately went back, and I talked about briefly about how I found out about the basic course after that. But that, and we could talk about who Drew Carey is, the game show host.
Yeah.
His ex-fiancée was murdered on Valentine's Day. Not this past one, but 2020. We arrested that murder suspect twice. So there's two stories about that.
Man.
Also arrested the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, Samuel Little, who professed at the time we arrested him. He was wanted for 3 murders in L.A., and after trial and was convicted, he said, "Hey, I want to talk," and he confessed to 93 murders. The FBI has already was able to determine that 60 of them so far were true. So if you Google his name, Samuel Little, you'll see he's the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. And somehow me and George Morales arrested him.
Unbelievable.
So I don't know how, and again, with Drew Carey, I could tell stories, but it was just
purely being lucky enough to be brought in by George into this unit,
Yeah.
and the men and women that have worked there. Being in Los Angeles, you're working a unit like that, you're apt to ultimately get high profile cases. So yeah, if you ever want me back,
Well, we're gonna have you back because that's another thing that we haven't even. And here's the thing: I say we haven't touched it, but your testimony, Chris is a child of God. He is a follower of Jesus Christ with a very real and present faith. He has a presence about him. He has that. That's a part of him. And you know, that's another thing that I want to unpack at some point is your testimony, which we talked about. Some of your mission that you just discussed is part of your testimony. Quite obviously, the divine protection that you credit to God that day, and not losing your teammates, making the decisions that you made. That's a huge part of your testimony.
I feel that God was putting those decisions into me.
Exactly.
It's
because he lives in you.
And I don't care who you are, whether you believe or not, or what your faith is, there is nobody that can convince me otherwise. I was there that day. Jason was there that day. And we said it at the same time. God had some angels looking over us that day. And I'm not here to say that over 3 decades of working, my entire career was the mean streets of L.A. I didn't take any pogue admin positions. I worked the field, the streets, the entire career. Every shift, almost every assignment there was to work. Almost everyone I worked. And I'm not going to lie. When you work 3 decades with the lowest of society, lowest forms of society, the scum of society, and downright evil, I'm not going to sit here and act like everything was great. There was times I would question my faith.
That's what undoubtedly.
And we could talk about that at another time.
Yeah.
I'd gladly come back.
I mean, that's the other aspect of you that I really want to unpack at some point, because there's Chris, the operator, right? And then there's Chris, the child of God, the human being, right? And I want to unpack that, man, because I know that there's a lot of strong testimony. I think that's going to be able to help a lot of people that are at places in their faith that they're looking at the world around them saying, how can there be this loving God that loved me enough that he literally humbled himself on a cross and died for me so that he can reconcile me with him, that I can be back in relate. Like, how does that exist when, look at the world, man, and we just see snapshots of what's going on in the world. Chris has had to actually have hands on this, right, and confront this evil face to face. So it's a whole nother level of I just would love to hear the stages of that and how now you are the man that you are right now sitting here in front of me, man. It's so, I mean, it just blows my socks off, dude. So we'll do that again on another episode. It's midnight.
You're kidding me.
It's midnight, man.
It's way past my bedtime.
We do things late around here, son. This was a 4 hour long podcast. I think it's our first 4 hour long conversation, and I wanted it to be this way because I knew it was going to take multiple episodes to unpack all your stuff, Chris. And so this is the way I wanted it, man. If you're comfortable with it, we'll close it off right here.
Absolutely.
And then we'll pick it up on another date. Without a doubt, we're going to be seeing Chris and hopefully one day working with Chris within the Body of 307 project, and hopefully a lot of you guys that are listening will get to meet him face to face one day. Is my prayer and my desire. So you've been such a huge part of this mission that we're on, Chris. You've been a huge part of mine and Blake's lives. We talk, me, Blake, and Nathan talk about you on a regular basis. You're always in our mind, man. And I just can't thank you enough, brother. I really can't.
No, it's, again, I'm honored and I'm truly humbled to be sitting here with y'all.
I told you I found 3 of 7 at a time in my life. I needed to find it.
Yeah.
And we could talk about how, and then that was about that failed attempt at the mountain.
Yeah.
And how words my dad would always say to me, that he spoke to me when I had that long drive home after failure, and went back, and that's when I connected with 3 of 7, and
the timing was right.
That's another thing that wasn't happenstance or coincidence.
No.
It was meant to be. So no, I'm again honored, and I'd love to come back. Hopefully by then, this adverse reactions I've had to this vaccine. Again, I'm not here to tell anyone I'm anti-vaccine. There was a specific reason I decided to get it, but for almost 2 weeks now, 13 days, I've been under the weather. So hopefully I didn't sound too congested and under the weather.
But you sounded great, brother.
I'm hoping by the next time I see y'all, I feel 100%.
Heck yeah, brother. And I'll attach this in the show notes, Chris, but where can people find you and follow you, brother?
I don't have any platforms, but I did recently, just for retirement purposes, to stay in contact with people that are retired. It's an easier way. I was convinced to join both Instagram and Facebook. It's just my name. So if you Google my name, or not Google my name, Facebook my name or Instagram it, you'll see me. I'm not.
All right, I'm going to attach them in the show notes. I'm going to attach Chris's Instagram handle in the show notes. I have a feeling one day he'll probably have a website. He'll probably have a book. No, don't shake your head.
That's
son.
Another thing we didn't talk about. When I retired, what happened? Remember I told you on the run about the phone call I got?
Oh, yeah. We forgot he's also a movie star. Chris is also a movie star. Look.
I'm an extra in the movie.
Yeah,
just so
right,
you know.
son.
I'm an extra.
They had to bump. He was in the movie so much they had to bump his pay up, son.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, man. Well, there's too many other things that we had to talk about on this one. So we got a lot of other things to share with you guys. So thanks for joining in, Chris. We love you, brother. Thank you for pouring into to this podcast and everybody that listens. We're gonna go get some rest, guys. Hope you're not up at midnight listening to this. Listen to this when you're fully awake and you can take the value that you need to get out of this. So love you guys. 3-7 podcast. Enough said.